Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Game Informer Show. I'm your host, Ben Hansen, joined by Wade Wojcik.
Hello.
What a delight to have you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
You were on to, well, first of all, you've talked Destiny in the past. You then saved the Game Club for Deus Ex Human Revolution.
Yes, famously.
Have you been on since then?
Nope.
Well, welcome back.
Thank you very
much. It's
much.
an honor to have you. And then we also have Andy McNamara.
Yes, indeed.
What the hell's going on?
I don't know. Madness.
It's been months.
I mean, basically, the behind-the-scenes guys are just all of a sudden up in front.
Yep.
Andy, the ultimate behind-the-scenes guy. Welcome back, Andy. It really has been a while. I don't even know if this year you've been on.
I mean, I don't have anything interesting to say. It's really what it is. It's like if I had something interesting to say, maybe I'd be on the show.
Breath of the Wild, you enjoying it more or less?
That game is both amazing, beautiful, fun, and boring at the same time.
I didn't sip my coffee at the right time.
This actually isn't the topic for today, everybody.
It should be, and it will be in the future.
No, I'm just saying it's like I don't know.
We need to get that hot seat.
It gets real boring.
It's like sipping coffee while camping, looking at a beautiful sunrise over a pristine lake. You're like, I'm bored.
No, okay. First of all, that's real, right? Like that is like.
Oh, here's your argument again, Andy. That's real.
I mean,
all right.
like walking endlessly through just like forests looking for orange things, and then being like, "Oh, there's a river between me and that orange thing. Let me turn around and walk all the way back."
Matt
Yay.
Miller. Matt Miller is also on the show. Welcome, sir.
Hi, Ben.
You asked.
So
You were just looking for trouble, Ben.
I know. We'll get into it at some point. I really want to. So we have a hell of a show. We're talking about Destiny 2, finally. Miller, somebody emailed in a couple weeks ago saying, where the hell is Matt Miller? Why aren't you guys talking about Destiny 2? Unpack that brain. So we're very happy to have you because honestly,
My brain's going to pour right out on this table. It's going to be great.
people think it might be exaggeration. Like outside of Bungie's walls, I don't know if anybody knows more about Destiny and
come
specifically
on.
Destiny 2 than you.
No.
Who? Name one person that would know more.
There's people that work at Activision.
I think
Okay,
they're-
outside of those, like, you know,
There's a lot of
inside walls.
YouTubers. A lot of YouTubers.
I do think I follow a lot of stuff about Destiny, but there are definitely people on the internet who know a lot more about Destiny.
But they
than I
haven't
do.
literally spent weeks within Bungie's halls doing stories, creating cover stories, features for the magazine.
I have been very fortunate to have like access to the people who make Bungie in a way that I think a lot of other people haven't, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're talking Destiny 2, then we're talking about Shadow of War. We're going to get JV in here. We're talking about Rime with Kyle Hilliard eventually, and then a game called Perception with Elise, and then great emails. Then we're talking to one of the hottest developers in games, Brendan Greene. You guys know who that is? That's Mr. PlayerUnknown himself
Oh, really?
from the eponymous
He
Battlegrounds.
is the unknown player.
Yes, he is. We get that full story behind the name. It's a fun chat just talking about like what is life like for this guy in the center of this maelstrom right now. Because I don't know if you guys know, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds is
hot.
Huge.
Yeah.
It's hot and fantastic.
Have you gotten to the first player
I
slot
have
yet?
not gotten the winner chicken
Okay.
dinner.
Mm.
A friend of mine got second. I've gotten maybe like fifth or sixth. Definitely
That's good, that's
second
good.
team overall.
Yeah.
But never first. But still, that game, I didn't think anything could rival Breath of the Wild for Game of the Year, but it's creeping up.
Game
It's
of the
creeping
year.
up. It is so much fun. So we talked to him about like when the console version's coming, some network issues they're working on. He also outlines like a replay system that sounds ambitious and incredible if they can pull it off. He also talks about the lore behind PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, which I don't know if he's ever really talked about before, and he outlines what a single-player campaign would look like if they ever were to put it in. And he compares it a lot to Watch Dogs, so stay tuned for that. It's a fun chat. But for now, Destiny 2. Last week was the big unveiling. There'd been, the logo reveal and stuff before that. What did you think of that reveal, Miller?
I thought it was a really good reveal. I thought that they did a good job of talking about some of the most important things that game needs to do, and they showed off distinct areas of play, even if the distinct areas of play were mostly the elements of play that weren't problems before. And if I was to say one thing that the event didn't do as well as it maybe could have is have their examples that they showed off and they let people play illustrate the same things that they were talking about in the event. And what I mean by that is that they talked about the idea of like a clan system and guided games and the way that was going to work. They talked about the idea that the locations were going to have more storytelling to them and more opportunities for exploration and that kind of thing. And those elements are really important. And the reveal event didn't necessarily go in depth on that stuff. Now that said, it's just a first look, right? Like that's not what the final game's going to be. It's just their first opportunity to let people play. And it was an ambitious way to show off the game. You had hundreds of people there.
It might have been close to 1,000. It was packed.
Really? So you were actually there. You got to play it at this event.
Yeah, I went to the event. Yes, it was crazy. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, like I wasn't quite. I mean, it was an airplane hangar. You know what I mean? Wow. Like, and so it was huge. It was fun. It was a really electric room because everyone there was either, like there was a few journalists, like I was in the group of journalists. There were maybe 20 of us. But the rest of it were, streamers and just other people kind of involved with the which I think is a great community, the Destiny community, right? Like
an amazing community, yeah.
And they were hype. I mean, they were really excited to see. I mean, like every time anyone walked by, like Deej or anyone, they were, yeah! I mean, and like the timer could not move fast enough. There was a lot of excitement.
What was like the tiniest detail that the crowd reacted to during the conference? Like, because there's so many small details that trickled out. Was there just one nerdy tidbit that the crowd got a huge reaction to?
I thought there was a big reaction when the golden gun fired up.
And the sweeper bot.
I thought that.
The sweeper bot was
totally
cool.
right. That's
so the sweeper bot's one of my favorite things, actually, because so a little explanation here,
Please.
Ben. There's a like a robot that's in the tower who's always sweeping, and at one point the sweeper bot lost their broom during the Halloween event and was really sad about it and like would make a big fuss about it, like, where's my broom? I cannot find my broom. Have you seen my broom? So it was like, I think that catapulted the sweeper bot into fandom's hearts.
I mean, he's just down a corner. So as soon as they go talk to the speaker, and you go down that hall, it's kind of like, we're loading some stuff.
And he's just always
and the crowd just like, yeah.
and so, but yeah, in Destiny 2, when you come across the sweeper bot, everything is destroyed in the tower, right? Like all your weapons and armor is destroyed.
Beach
all the
balls
people who
destroyed everywhere.
Yeah, all the people who are normally in their places are gone. And yet you come across this one spot where the sweeper bot is there, still sweeping.
That's amazing.
Surrounded by dead Cabal.
And as we learned, we asked Luke Smith in that rapid fire interview back in Taken King, he is paid with batteries.
Yes.
He does get some sort of payment for his work sweeping at the tower.
So that made me happy. So I get that. I also thought people got really excited about in the Zavala trailer that they opened up with, there's a scene where you get to see one of the old battles that happened in the city where they were fighting the Fallen, and then it cuts at one point to them, to Zavala, and then other Titans who are important in the lore that he's hanging out with.
It's the first time they've really shown that.
About that. Well, they've never really shown stuff down in the city, and so that was cool. It kind of alluded to some aspects of the lore.
That's the Battle of Twilight Gap.
I think it was 6 fronts, if I had to guess.
Oh, so you're right, because that's the one with just the Titans. Right?
Yeah, but
I don't pay this much attention to lore. I shoot people in the head with a gun.
But
you played thousands of hours of this game, Andy.
Yeah, I played. You don't know how many games I played thousands of hours of, and I have no idea what the lore is. First of all, I did not read any Grimoire cards, just so you know, not a single one.
That's a mistake.
Well, people say that, but you know what? Maybe you shouldn't have put it on a card that I got to go on the internet and check out.
Well, that again, one of the things they're doing.
Yes.
They're trying to put that stuff in the game, so they say.
Even like with the reveal, it seems like they're hitting personality and story, putting it so much more front and center than it was in the original Destiny. I mean, just the key art, the characters have faces and eyes now, and they're telling jokes. It's like taking that Cade sensibility and kind of spreading it out over the entire game.
They're giving you an opportunity to meet them. Do you know what I mean? And spend time with them instead of just like walking up and going like, "What's my mission? Here's your mission.
Yeah.
Okay, bye."
I think one of the big takeaways for me for the reveal event is that they had a good sense of what they needed to show off and get their community excited and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's great. I think the big challenge from here until launch is going to be finding ways to speak to everybody else. And that, I mean, that's hard for any franchise, right? Like, how do you take an existing property that's really hot for a certain number of people, even a large number of people? I mean, there's millions and millions of Destiny players, but you always want to be growing, right? Destiny 2 is built from the ground up around growing that audience. I mean, it's not like it doesn't speak to returning players, but most of the changes that they're making in terms of streamlining subclasses and giving more flexibility to the weapon types and making the clan system easier for solo players to join in on group activities. All of these things are built to get more people in the door. And the challenge for Activision and Bungie in the next few months is going to be, how do we communicate that message to a bunch of people out there who've already written Destiny off as not their game?
Yeah. So here's my evolution of watching the reveal event. It's like I played a ton of Taken King in particular. Really enjoyed it. Saw the Destiny 2 event. I was looking forward to Destiny 2, but it wasn't tip of my tongue type of thing. But
Sure.
saw that, got excited. I thought like that opening mission they showed, it's like, oh, this is a crazy set piece. This looks like a Halo mission or something. This looks fantastic. And then after the event, thinking about it more, watching more footage, I kind of fell into that. There's a rise, I think, in the internet discussion about it, of people saying more and more like, maybe this is just Destiny 1.5. And the more I think about it, it's like, okay, same classes, same enemies, some new locations, you're still on Earth overall. But, I mean, even that Nessus place, it kind of just looks like the Black Garden, doesn't it?
But I think that's Miller's point, what he started with, is that they showed us familiar pieces. I mean, the Crucible map was a new game and everything like that. But, I mean, like, it was... Here, just do Crucible all on its own in like a singular kind of silo, right? And the thing that they're talking about with Destiny 2 that makes it interesting is the way they talk about, by the way, which I haven't seen, you know what I mean? Like, this is the interesting part of like engaging in the world, making those public spaces more interesting, drawing people to the events, getting people engaged. I mean, I think that was the one thing I felt consistent, like with anyone with Destiny 1, when I was like, this game's great. Play it. Okay, you got to level up, and maybe I'll help you some, but when you're done, then I'm going to show you how this game starts after you get to the max level, right? This is when it starts. And then it would be try to show people raids and try to like get them engaged in that kind of content that's post. And it was hard. There were a lot of people that fell off there and they didn't get a chance to see it or get engaged with it. And I think that's always been their biggest barrier for Destiny 1 and for Destiny 2 is to get people to that next level, to have them not only be led to that content, but get a chance to engage in that content. I think guided games helps that. I mean, it's basically Group Finder. Do you know what I mean? That you can go in and just like make a group with a tool, Because I kind of asked, I was like, do you need to have 3 people in a guild to be able to pick up other people? I mean, could it be one person who just finds 5 other solo people that could create that group? And they weren't entirely crazy about answering that questions, but essentially, I think in some way, shape, or form, you can just create groups. It's not matchmaking, but they're going to make it so you can make groups. And I think that's one step. I think it empowers Sherpas to be able to get people into content. I mean, that was how I saw some content. I'm not the greatest PvP player. I'm definitely above average, but the Lighthouse was very hard for me to get to. One of the things that I think is interesting about that is that them changing everything to 4v4 and all the content to 4 is an interesting like fire team change. Like that's the one that's like I find most interesting and also kind of like concerning, at least for me.
That's all modes. That's not just the one they showed.
All PvP modes are 4v4.
It's okay. That's interesting. Just want to make it a little more personal, a little more strategic. Like they have a lot more icons on the screen, and also a detail I love is they name each area, and then they show the name of that area on the map, so you can easily coordinate with teams. It's so smart.
The PvP system is much more readable. Just across the board. From audio cues. I mean, this is hard to pick up at the event, but I think the time that I had the opportunity to like visit Bungie and play a lot of that same content, and in a more maybe quiet setting, it was a little easier to tell like some of the ways they've changed audio cues and built the UI at the top of the screen to just more clearly communicate what's happening in the match. All that stuff is built around like both for the players and also for people watching. I mean, there's a lot of people at this point who watch Destiny, right? Like just like any other game these days. And I think they're catering to that audience to a certain degree of saying, we want somebody who's watching their favorite streamer put this up online. We want them to be able to understand what's happening in a given game.
Yeah.
But the 4v4 thing that Andy's talking about, I think is interesting because there is a dynamic in the current way that people play the game where there's a natural structure of like multiples of 3, either groups of 3 or groups of 6 are able to move pretty seamlessly between almost any activity. This structure breaks that a little bit. It says that like if I finish what we presume is going to be a 6-person raid.
It's a presumption, though. We don't know.
No, we don't know.
Does that mean 8-person raid is a possibility, or
we don't know? They have not talked about raids really at all. But if you do that, or for that matter, if you're doing a 3-person strike, let's say, there really isn't a seamless flow into group finding and PvP, right?
Yeah.
there always is going to be a mismatch there, which I'm a little bit concerned about.
I mean, that was something we do. Like when you had three friends online, you were playing, you're like, man, I cannot do another strike. Hey, you want to go do some PvP? Sure. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like you were just kind of, you still got to hang out with your friends, and this is a forced change in that is big. And I also think too, like I talked to Miller and Wade about it. Also, like 4v4 changes like PvP in a lot of ways. In that, like, I mean, when it was 6v6, I only had to carry 1/6 of the team. Like, you know what I mean? In 4v4, I'm responsible for 25% of like the team's success. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like I mean, I'm breaking it down in pretty simple numbers, but I mean, that's a lot more pressure and responsibility in a match. I mean, like, there's one thing to be like, hey, I'm going to play with these guys who are really good. I'll cover you in the back. You know what I mean? And like, make sure I'm kind of, you know, keeping some suppressing fire, let's say, in the match. In this case, 4v4, this is a lot tighter combat, right? I mean, it does force the issue in particular. Now, that said, like Trials was always fun because it was 3v3 and it was that, you know, like you were going to find yourself in like 2v1 and it mattered a lot if you could pull it off. And I did pull it off every once in a while. I'm not entirely horrible, but like, you know, it's a lot more pressure. Where in 6v6, there's enough time, like in a spawn timer, to get more people back into the fray and keeps the groups battle a little bit more balanced. So it's a different game. I mean, it is indeed a different game with 4v4, I feel.
I mean, your last sentiment there, Andy, is I think the biggest mismatch between what has become the public conversation about Destiny 2 in the last week and what my perception of it has been during my time, which is to say that you reflected that perception, right? That there's a lot of people who are like, this kind of feels just like another expansion to Destiny, or like maybe this is Destiny 1.5. The time that I have played the game and the time that I have talked to the developers has not communicated that to me at all.
Is it all coming through details, or you think there's just big reveals yet to come that are going to be drastically different?
Maybe it's just my perception. I mean, maybe this is just me, but in my mind, some of the changes that they are making are very fundamental changes. You wouldn't want them to change like, well, you know, we have some of the best gunplay that any FPS has ever done on consoles. So we're going to change that and we're going to make this a third-person melee game. And I mean, no. Like, this is going to be a follow-through of what Destiny has done well and try to resolve and streamline things that weren't as good, right? And I feel like that the changes that they are making, you know, the new weapon types really change the PvP experience a lot. They change how I think about going through a battle in PvE experiences. There's a greater focus on like weapon switching and constantly having this kind of dynamic feel to battles, and forcing you to like, oh, I'm out of ammo on this one weapon, I need to move to this other thing. There's
the talent trees are different.
The talent trees are like the subclass stuff is really different. Like it sacrifices customization opportunities in the name of giving people optimal ways to enjoy and experience the classes. That's going to be liked by some people and not liked by other people, but it still comes back to the fact that this game feels very different, right? To me.
Those are all so specific, though. I agree, like, for the Destiny fans, but I think from the outside perspective, they look in and say, okay, who are you fighting? Who are the bad guys? It's the Cabal. Oh, those are those big fat guys on Mars?
No, you're totally right. I mean, I think that top layer, the cake looks the same, but I mean, the mix is very much different.
Bite into it, you'll see.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. That's. I mean, and by the way, as someone who's a huge fan of the original, I mean, I'm concerned that they ruined my chocolate cake, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I loved what I played there. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I loved what I played there, and I've had some conversations, not as much as Miller has, but about the game, and some things you go like, okay, yeah, I mean, that could work. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of questions. That said, I mean, I left my pre-E3 week, and the game that I'm most excited for right now, as far as like around this kind of E3 stuff, is Destiny 2. I mean, I can't wait to try this cake, and if it's delicious, oh boy, this is going to be fantastic, right? But I do think there's certainly, I'm not going in without concerns, and I'm not going in without like a wait and see approach. But I mean, like, let's talk about some things here. I mean, Bungie's got a pretty good track record of like doing things really well, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing too, I think like there's some behind the scene things that they can do that make this game better. You know, like even if like it is, let's just make the assumption that the internet is right and it's Destiny 1.5. If they just make it where it's easier for them to make more content and deliver more content in a faster pace and do more events and create the world and make it more vibrant, like that's a way better game. Like that's a significantly better game rather than waiting 17 months for SLR racing. Or SLR.
Totally. But even with like the Rise of Ironcover story, they were big on like, we've got a whole separate live team now. We're trying to nail this entire format. I mean, do we have the sense that they have completely changed the back end and the entire pipeline?
I spoke with them and asked them very specifically, do you want to talk about what's lying beyond, how you're going to avoid content droughts and things like that in post-release? And they just don't want to talk about that stuff yet. My sense, and this is not like, oh gosh, Bungie, I'm spoiling some secret that Bungie has told me. I don't know. But my sense is very much that Destiny 1's, like just the architecture of how they could put together that game and what was involved with creating new content had a lot of challenges to it.
Yeah.
And I think that the way that by going back and resetting everything, by not having to carry over stuff from Destiny 1 and being able to just say like, yeah, we're going to build this system from the ground up. I think they know the way that they need to be able to build content now to satisfy their audience. And I have to imagine that Destiny 2 is going to do a better job of addressing those needs.
I mean, they didn't have that much time. They're still on the treadmill from hell for getting this thing out. So how much can they change?
Well, they started on Destiny 2 a pretty long time ago. I mean, I think that the game has been in the works for a while, and
I think almost 2 years ago, I had a friend say, off the record that he had played some of Destiny. I mean, it's been. It's been a long time.
I mean, so leads from Taken King, Mark and Luke, and so in theory they were shifted directly over to it. But I'm sure something was in the works even before then. It's not like that's even the starting line necessarily. Right. And who knows how much stuff was pulled from Destiny 1 and like, let's save this for the big second outing here.
Yeah, it's hard to know. But yeah, I mean, I think if they can address those the needs of a live community of players that want to play their game on a week-to-week, day-to-day basis, even not just week-to-week, and see new things coming out, I'm very confident that there's going to be an increased effort to speak to that stuff. The other thing that I would say about Destiny 2 is that like I'm very much in Andy's camp that there are things about this game that I'm in a wait and see mode about because I haven't seen enough of it to really make a judgment about like things like that 4v4 decision, or does this change to kinetic energy and power weapons? Do I really like that more than primary, special, and heavy? Is that good? It felt good initially, but it's not clear. But I will say that Bungie is very, very intentional in their choices. If there's anything that has come out of the many conversations that I've had with the creative leads at Bungie, it's that they make decisions that are fueled by very particular goals, right? The move to those weapon types, the move to 4v4 in competitive, are things that they talk about over and over again, and they debate with each other, and they look at the user data, and then they make a decision. This is what's best for this game. And moreover, you've got that team, that lead team of Luke and Mark, who at this point are an experienced partnership of creators with each other, and they are insistent on this kind of like no compromises approach to design. They would rather rip something out of the game that is okay than put it in. And so everything in Destiny 2, in their minds anyway, is going to be like at that line of being like, we really think this is good. We really think this is the way that it should be. And so when Destiny 2 comes out, I think it will very much speak to the vision of what those Bungie creators want it to be. And then it'll be up to fans to kind of be like, well, that may be what Bungie wants it to be, but this isn't what we want it to be. Or they're going to love it.
Yeah, and things too. I think they've listened in the past. I mean, I think Destiny 1 changed a lot over the period. So, I mean, like, this is their first, shot. Like, this is what they've come up with. This is what they think is best. And I think they will listen to the community if there are changes, and maybe there are none. I think there it very well could be that, hey, this was the way to do it. This makes the game more competitive. I've certainly always wanted competitive Destiny to be kind of more of an esport. I would love to watch more of it, to see more like of the pros playing, other than just like watching some guy stream, and then like it was even like, oh, we're doing sweaties. It's like, what are you doing? And like just all the tools that they lack to like create and be and compete, with the best. So I'm for that. I want to see that. I hope it's not at the sacrifice of like the fun of PvP that I had, right? And like the fun I had playing with my friends, which is, I think, very much at the core of why Destiny is fun. So it'll be interesting to see. But I mean, I'll tell you, I sat down. I didn't sit down. I guess I stood up. I got the controller in my hand, started playing, and like the guns feel so good. I think the world looks. I think it looks better than I thought it was. I think the first time I talked to Mill, he goes like, "Yeah, it looks better." You know what I mean? And I was like, "Nah, this looks way better."
You're playing on a PS4 Pro, right?
Yeah, I was playing on a PS4 Pro.
Okay, and I think I played on 60,
and I played it on PC as well.
Okay.
There's a lot of argument that it runs at 30 frames on console, but I don't know. I mean, like
the Pro. Okay.
I mean,
it does. Yeah, that's what it is.
Oh wow.
But I mean, and on PC, I mean, it looks amazing on PC. I mean, you can really tell that the engine is flying on there. But I mean, it feels good. You know what I mean? Like, and the fact that the characters are more involved to me makes it interesting. The planets look the same. I think they do a great job of like making worlds that are fun to be in. And I felt, even whatever may have felt familiar, I thought it was pretty great. I'm really excited to see things like when they say things like the public spaces are going to be bigger, more interesting, and have more things going on. Like, I had a lot of fun in the public space. I hated it when I got like really lame quests and I sat there and like, farmed a herb, for hours on end, right?
Wait, what?
Like, that was not fun.
Come on, farm to herb.
Yeah.
Come on, keep up, Wade.
I don't know whatever they called the like.
I mean,
whatever
you
thing
had to do some of that stuff, Wade, right? Like
Farming herbs?
Well, you had to go find a particular material.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You had to get helium.
There
for
were
something.
0 herbs, though.
Like that.
All right, hot shot.
Hey, it's the same
It's the same
crap.
thing.
It's the same crap.
Well,
it's like
what I want to know is, how did the shotgun feel in the heavy slot? Did that work for you guys?
You want to explain why this is a radical change?
Okay,
here?
so this is one of those things that speaks to that idea that like I really think this game feels very different, which is that like shotguns and snipers have moved out of that second slot and into what they now call power ammo. So it is competing for that slot with things like grenade launchers, right?
Did they make them more powerful then because of that?
Well, they're pretty. Yeah, I mean, I think it let them take the gloves off with shotguns and sniper rifles and just make them really, really awesome. Which has always been kind of a dilemma. Those two weapons in particular.
yeah,
in the special
shotguns
slot,
really haven't been killing people, or sniper rifles haven't really been.
But
killing
that's my
people.
point.
I mean, it's like
right.
yeah,
like
yeah.
that's the problem in D1 has frequently been the competitive game has migrated to either like a shotgun meta or a sniper meta for certain periods because, they're so awesome and people who are good with them just wreck.
Yeah.
The idea, they have increasingly moved the PvP game away from that special ammo focus thing, which I think sort of has intimated the direction they're going with Destiny 2. That's very purposeful on their part. But now it's there. Like Destiny 2, we are at the end point of that evolution. And shotguns, sniper rifles, down in power ammo. And when you get power ammo in a competitive match, you get it just for you. You don't get it for your nearby teammates. With old heavy ammo in Destiny 1, you just need it to get to the spot where the heavy ammo spawns, hold the spot, protect it from the enemy team that's going to try to like come and super you. And then if you got it, you all got it. And that was like a press win button.
It was pretty great when you got it.
Yeah.
That's basically what it came down to. I mean, it was like everyone's got rockets and machine guns.
And if the other team managed to turn it around at that point, that was like, oh wow, they really got us, right?
Yeah.
At this point, when you get power ammo, are you getting grenade launcher ammo, or are you going to get your shotgun, right? That makes the choice to carry a shotgun a complicated one, I think.
Weird. Wade, where's your overall excitement for this game?
I just wanted to say real quick with regard to the PvP thing, 4v4 is really hard because I feel like they're trying to, in some weird way, go back to their Halo style,
Sure.
which was 4v4 matches.
Yep.
You'd think they would at least try and split the difference between what they had and try trying to appease the Halo crowd, their Halo fans. Who
So you're saying they should have gone 5v5?
No. What I mean is options.
Give me a pen and paper.
All right. Here's the
have a
game type
graph.
that's 4v4. Here's the game type you can do that 6v6 or 3v3. Like, those kind of options. Because I have friends that I'd play Halo 4v4 matches with. And Destiny came out, we adapted. We would just like do 6v6 matches, or only 3 of us are on now. That's okay. We can group together. But now it's kind of in this weird place.
The 4v4 decision, they have a excellent justification for it. Like they talk about it from an angle of like, this is the kind of classic competitive experience. We want it to feel more like a true classic competitive video game experience. It does demand a little bit more teamwork, I think, and communication, especially in like the new match type countdown that they are showing off. Now, that said, without actually saying anything about it, the other elephant in the room is the fact that they are not doing dedicated servers again.
Yeah.
Which for some players in the community of Destiny, that is a very, very big deal. Whether it factored into decision making or not, we will never know.
Mm-hmm.
But it is, in my mind, very likely that a 4v4 match is better to is easier to optimize for as far as matchmaking than a 6v6 match.
And that does make a lot of sense.
Now, again, that is not that's not Bungie's stance on it.
But
that's not why they're saying that they did that. But that's what I think.
Yeah.
My argument back to that was that like a large player pool solves all those problems, right? And if everyone's playing and having fun, then you have plenty of people and you can do great matchmaking. I mean, matchmaking falls apart when there's less people.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And improves when there are more people playing around the globe and in your area, right?
Yeah.
So I can see that. It'll be interesting to see, like as they remove the one and kind of go with the other, because that also concerns me. Like when you say that, Miller, I mean, it makes me cringe a little bit, and it's not your fault for saying it, you know what I mean? Because it's the truth, kind of thing. But like, it's like we want it to be more of a classic competitive, PvP feel, and it's like, well, I've got lots of games that do that. You know what I mean? Like that's one of the things I liked about Destiny was, if I was having a rough match and I couldn't shoot anybody in the head, and we've all had those. Like, man, I'm way off, and then you just went like, oh, that's right, I have hammers. You know what I mean? And and just kind of like blow some people up, and it's like, oh, that felt good, and like every once in a while I'll make a good play, and like there was fun things that could happen. I mean, there's times when I was on fire and we were rolling people, and that's great too. But I'm just talking about the times when like it didn't have a classic feel. It gave me times when like, hey, I didn't do it, but we managed to get the heavy ammo, and I've got a machine gun, and I can mow people down with a machine gun when they don't have a machine gun, right? Like that was fun. Yeah. Right? I mean, there was something fun to that. I mean, I know maybe not the most balanced thing in the world, but I had a lot of fun with that. I used to go hardcore on PvP some weeks. Iron Banner, I would just sit and play because it was fun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was a good, entertaining PvP experience, and I hope that continues.
Well, with the, in theory, going back a little bit more to the Halo roots, any word on vehicles? The thing they've slowly just been pushing out of the Destiny experience.
There's like one mode in Crucible in Destiny 1 that has vehicles, I think.
They removed it.
Yeah, they did remove.
But it came back in Iron Banner recently, I thought, because I've played it.
They did flirt with kind of bringing that in and out of the game, but like the way that it was at game launch, where it was like, we've totally got maps that have vehicles on them. They got away from that pretty quickly, and felt like it just wasn't there. And we haven't seen too much yet about what they're doing this time around with vehicles.
There's that giant tank in the trailer.
There is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they can have. I mean, they kept them as a mode, but you had to like dig to get to them. Like it wasn't surfaced in like any kind of like.
And with
random
custom
game.
matches, you could bring them back.
Yeah,
right?
I think so. I mean, there was a way to do it, but it was. I mean.
For a while, they were totally gone.
They were totally gone. Or it would show up as like one of the weekly PvP modes that would have them and bring it back. And you're like, well, not playing that this week.
Yeah. I remember talking to Lars, multiplayer lead, every time we went to Bungie. And the stance was always like, we'd love to bring them back. We want to do it right. Now's not the time. It's still in the oven. Yeah. That beautiful cake of vehicles is still in the oven. So I don't know if Destiny 2 is the time to take it out of the oven, or we're waiting for Destiny 3.
We don't know yet.
I didn't answer the question about what I'm most excited about. I've had many a conversation with Miller, not so much Andy, about the lore and story of Destiny. So I'm sorry, Andy.
It's all right.
But my favorite part of Destiny is the stories in the grimoire, basically.
Favorite part?
Yeah. The stories that are not told in the game are my favorite part. Because
of the game.
Yeah.
You just like to bring them up in conversation and go, oh, did you know?
Didn't you know about the space dragon?
I would with Miller. I would with Miller, but he already knows everything about the grimoire. But it's some of the best sci-fi that I've read is in the grimoire.
What the hell are you talking about? Really?
I mean, Miller? Am I wrong? There's good sci-fi.
There's good sci-fi.
There's acceptable sci-fi in there, right, Miller?
I think there is good sci-fi. I'm not sure for me personally.
Doled out one card at a time.
The best sci-fi I've ever encountered.
I'm not saying it's the best, but
it's like saying baseball cards are your favorite sports fiction of all time.
Now, in defense of Wade, though, I do think there is genuinely some very good, very cool world building and fiction that goes on in those Grimoire cards and in the Book of Sorrow stuff. And as a lore enthusiast myself, I can't say that I do not object at all to the idea of taking that stuff out of a website and putting it in game. What I worry about is losing it. Like, I worry that depth of world building that they had because of the Grimoire, that they won't find the way to actually translate that over into the game
because they're too busy cracking jokes and just showing up personality.
Well, there's nothing wrong with humor and like having good adventure driven storytelling. I want that there too. I'm just saying that, like, they have said, and I have to at this point take them at their word, that they're trying to transfer that depth of fiction and lore to things like scannable objects in the world and the characters you meet in the actual destinations that you go to. And I really hope that that's true. I would love for that element of the game, which Wade and I and many other kind of enthusiasts really like about the game, to let the rest of the community in on that secret.
Well, I remember
but I just don't know if it's going to happen.
Well, they also said that with Rise of Iron, right? And there was the one Iron Banner person that was kind of like a historian. Help me out, lore nerds. And they said, oh, she'll be like telling the stories.
Yeah,
from
what's
the
her
past.
name?
Tyra Karn.
Okay.
For the like 3 story missions that were in that.
Well, no, but the idea is like, oh, you go talk to her, you get some details. Do you feel like they pulled it off in Rise of Iron?
There was a little bit of that, but I would say that if it was only at the level of that, of having Tyra Karn kind of like have a couple sentences in one of her narrations that gave you something,
that'd be a failure.
That would be a failure of trying to transfer the Grimoire into the game. It wouldn't necessarily be a failure of Destiny 2 fundamentally. Like, maybe they're just saying, like, you know what, that's not a part of like our universe we want to keep
which
going.
is the biggest shame of all time.
I'm not saying that's what they're doing, but
if
it
they
could
do,
be what they're doing.
I will never forgive them if they don't. If they don't do justice to what they've already written. It's like they tilled the soil, they got the fertilizer, and then they're like, let's just scrap all that farm field. We're not going to plant anything.
Yeah,
this foundation is so strong there.
On the high level, looking at it, it seems like almost like taking King again, where it's like there's a good core where it's a very visual representation of like, hey, this Cabal ship has landed on the Traveler. In theory, you can see it when you're on the Forest Earth place, right? And I just love that visual representation. And then, hey, we have another one big bad. Focus on this. So they have the option of just focusing in on those 2 very easy to understand concepts and just bypassing all this nerd stuff.
Yeah, I mean, thematically, Destiny 2 feels more focused than Destiny 1 does.
Yes.
There is a distinct conceit to their narrative about that wraps together with what players are experiencing, and I really like that. It is about the loss of things and the recovery of things.
XCOM 2.
Just like XCOM 2. I mean, when you think about, like, for a standard Destiny player, or even for somebody who's like super hardcore, like Andy, who wasn't necessarily like, you weren't reading the Grimoire website every day.
No.
For you, your engagement with the world of Destiny was very much tied up with your powers and your weapons and your armor.
Correct.
Right? This game is about losing all of that and having to get it back. And that has an emotional weight for Andy, right? Like, there's a sort of fascinating thing they've done there.
Don't you think that's retrofitting because they needed to have that clean slate to move it onto PC, move it into other places?
I don't think you can say that it's like retconning something when it's the new it's what they're doing right now.
But don't you think that premise comes from technical limitations? Initially, the kernel of it?
I think every MMO in the history of making any let's say any game as service, I mean, some have come out and hit it out of the park, but most of them, you make the game and you put it out and you go like, man, we could have done these 17, 20 things differently than we did in the final game. But we had to produce it and finish it and get it out, right? And I think you're going to experience that, right? And I think like when you sit down and you go like, okay, how do we like change things around to like modify what we have? I mean, sometimes the easiest answer with that is just throw it out and just make a new one that solves the problems that you see, right? It may introduce new problems, like just like the new talent trees. Like there's less quote unquote options, because once you head down a path, you're limited in what you can choose once you go down that path. But that makes it easier to balance. You know what? And like a lot of people complain about balance or like, you know, OP builds or like other things that happen as a game. And like when you put it in the hands of millions of players, the way they solve and find things that make a game unbalanced, that makes it easier for them to fix it, to keep the game on track, to have those things work, to have items and weapons and things like that, not have so many like,
everything's a give and take there.
a give and take, yeah. I mean, so you can have, instead of like, I mean, almost with any meta, you know what I mean? There's like, okay, everyone, yes, there are thousands of guns in this game. There is only the one you want right now, because it is the one that matters. It is the one that does, you know, has the fastest time to kill, all these things. Even though there's all these choices, there's really only one, right? And all these games suffer from that one choice, right? So whatever they can do to smooth out those edges and have there be more choice, or at least choices that maybe aren't the one choice, but are the second tier, has more entries, right? If it can be 5, if it can be 10, if it can be 20 weapons, that's great. That's amazing balance if you've done that. So I think throwing out, you know, the baby with the bathwater is okay in this case. Do you know what I mean? I think that's all right. Like, they kept the core elements that I think are there, which is the gunplay. Let's see how they rebuilt it and how we get to like level our characters and go through and like, you know, find that power in that story. And I think that's the thing too, is Grimoire can be great. And I mean, I heard sitting in orbit, waiting for long load screens, I heard lots of stories about the lore that I never had to read.
Going to Bungie with Miller is the most fascinating stuff. When he dives deep with some of those writers, like, I had no idea this was in that shooter game I play. It's fascinating. Maybe it's just Miller's an eloquent guy, but there is potential there.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is too, like a lot of the weapons, like you see in the thing, like a lot of the weapons that are part of that lore and that have stories around them, or that are basically a part of that history, are in this game. Like, I mean, at least are in the videos, you know what I mean? Which I think points to them wanting to keep that history there. It's just a question of how they surface it and how they do it.
They want to, that word surface is important. They want to surface things in this game for the largest majority of players that they can do that. They also use the term unhide the fun a lot, which I like.
That's good.
The strangeness of phrase of not saying reveal the fun is significant there. They are saying that there is fun there, but it is currently hidden. Right. We want to unhide it, and that's
accurate, by the way.
It is absolutely
it's very accurate.
There's things like exotic weapons in that game that they have data that there's lots of people who have never gotten an exotic weapon in Destiny. Lots and lots of people who've played Destiny don't have an exotic. And that's wild to someone like Wade or Andy or I.
We collected them.
Who collected dozens of them. Yeah. Who made it a point like, I'm going to get all of the exotics. There's dozens of these things, and I'm going to go after each one of them. And I'm going to go on Reddit, and I'm going to find out how I get this one. And I'm going to like go do this quest line to get this other one. And I'm going to wait for 8 months for a Hawk Moon to drop for this other one. You know, like those sorts of things is what we did. But for other people, they're like, I guess there's some guns in this game. And they never got to that point of like,
I like the automatic ones.
Yeah, exactly. Like totally. Like that, there's an entire segment of the population that is bigger than people like Wade, Andy, and I, who are like, I like the ones that I can shoot with I just hold down the trigger.
Yeah,
I like those ones. Like, and they never see the fact that there's like these named weapons that have histories, and you have a quest line for them, and they shoot totally different from all the other ones in the game, and that's a problem. Like, that's a problem with the game.
Turn more people into nerds is the ultimate mission.
Get more people to like experience that fun.
Right.
Right.
I mean, we talked about it before. I mean, like, one of my favorite moments in all of gaming was we knew this weapon existed. Then we heard someone had found it. We were like doing the dungeon, and it was like, oh my God, we started freaking out. I mean, we stayed up to what? We were up till like 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning. Sorry?
Is this the OP quest?
Yeah.
We talked about it on the podcast.
Yeah, I mean,
it was
just
crazy.
It was crazy. I mean, it was like insane, and we're sitting there and like trying all this stuff and just like solving it. And I didn't know all the lore behind it, at the time, but that was a lot of fun and just a super interesting quest. And just the discovery and finding of those things, or even things like, was it the Black Spindle?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Where it's like, someone beat this mission in
different
10 minutes.
way.
And you were like, wait, what? You know what I mean? Like, and they're like, no, there's a whole other path that opens if you do this. And then you run back and you're like, no, there is not. And then you went with your friends, you're like, holy crap, there is. And then you got to the end, and like the fight at the end is super hard, and we got totally smoked. I think
You
the
did
first
it like 10 times to get it.
it's just like, man, I can't believe someone figured this out. And then we like, spent the next couple. And that's the thing is like the story is not just that we went in there and died. It's that we spent the next 2 weeks going like, yeah, man, we got to get this thing. Are you going to level that thing up? We're going to, like when we were like sitting there planning to go back to go get Black Spindle.
When
you
the
know what
next
I mean?
day
Like,
came up that we could, yeah.
It wasn't a quest we were given. It was a quest we made.
And I think that's one of like the strongest things in Destiny is that the sense of community, like searching for these things that they've hidden in the game.
Yeah,
Especially
for sure.
Outbreak Prime is like so crazy.
Yeah.
That took that level of data wrangling and community effort to bring that gun
It
out.
was built to be done that way.
Yeah.
It had to be done that way
Yeah.
by a community. It was really, really fascinating. I'd love to see more of that stuff happen. But at the same time, find ways to...
That's the fun that people have to find. A lot of people didn't experience that.
Right.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
And
Like they
how
don't get that.
And you can still have some of that stuff while simultaneously finding ways to like, let's get some exotics into people's hands over the course of the game. Like earlier, Andy was talking about the idea of like, you had to get people through the game to get to the game, right? You had to get to the end game before you could like experience why Destiny was really fun.
Yeah.
Again, that's a problem,
For sure.
right? There's nothing wrong with having a bunch of stuff at the end. But you need to have things that are strung through the experience of a natural playthrough that players can be like, oh, I get why I'd want to do strikes or nightfalls or raids or whatever, because this is fun.
I got one more question about Destiny 2 for you, Miller. Isn't it a little weird that you're going to the moon Titan in this game? It's like if a moon was called Hunter or Warlock. Like they have to acknowledge it in some way. That's a little weird.
I think you need to take to task the people who named the moons of Saturn. for that one.
Galileo. I don't know. I assume it was.
or the classes of Destiny. You could take them to task too.
Well, didn't it have a different name at some point in the beginning? Don't you remember when they first unveiled Destiny? It was different.
You
They
seem
call-
like the only person bothered by that.
No, there's a huge Reddit community. They're outraged about the name of the moon. Anyways, we got to stop talking about this lovably nerdy stuff and move on to something classy like Middle Earth: Shadow of War. Wade, would you mind swapping out there? Shadow of War, Middle Earthen with JV Gwaltney.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome, sir. Wade's gone. We're here to
my
talk
God.
about this
Thank
game. You played it, saw it. What's the status here?
Andy and I both played it.
Oh, wow.
I didn't get to play it.
Yeah.
All the stations were busy. I only saw it.
Oh, wait, you only saw it?
Only saw it.
Ha! I got to play it.
I know.
You didn't.
I know. Well,
So what were
That's
you
twice
playing?
now I've seen it and not played it, by the way.
What was new? What are they showing off? What
Oh,
stands
man.
out?
All right. So what they showed us, we didn't get to see any of the open world. We saw the fortress raiding sequences. So you know how in the original game you go just find war chiefs and attack them. And sometimes they'd be in camps, but sometimes they'd be wandering, Mordor all over the place.
Yeah.
So the deal with this one is they have fortresses now, or keeps, or whatever you want to call them. I think the proper term is fortress, is what they called it. But
Hang on, let me
basically,
double check. Middle Earth expert, Matt Miller, Fortress.
Sure, man.
Great,
Yeah.
got it. Okay.
The one fortress to rule us all.
oh boy. But yeah, so with every war chief you take down, you have to sort of, it's not a matter of like sneaking into a camp anymore and just like killing them, because sometimes you could do that. It's like a full-on assault. A lot of it looked honestly more like Total War, if you guys have ever played that, like the Total War series where you send like massive armies at against each other, or like to storm sort of settlements. And it you're still playing Shadow of Mordor, and it still has all the same moves and the combat, but like you get to do this huge preparation before the assault.
Like changing camera perspective, like strategic.
No. Like, you pick your armies and then you like load them out. So you have like 3 platoon leaders, your little orc buddies, and you can load them out with like special abilities. So you can give like one of them like the suicide bombers from the Helm's Deep. Remember that one Uruk who like storms the gate and explodes? Yeah.
Of
You
course.
can have that. You can have that guy.
That's good, man.
Thank you.
You can have like a monster that's walking around with a catapult strapped to its back that can bring down a wall. You can like have various creatures that you can summon during battle, like spiders. You can have spiders, you just summon them.
Like full Shelob style spiders.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
And then I saw like a bunch of dragons in footage.
Yeah, dragons, I think they said that you can, once you get far enough into the game, you can actually have that as an option. But early on, like, you see dragons flying about.
Are they
but
calling them dragons?
I don't know. Like, they said dragons, like, when we were there.
I think
I'm
they said dragons. You can like control them and like you fly around like
Yeah.
dropping like fire bombs with them.
Yeah, like, but they start out as on, like, the enemy side. So you have to, like, do Talion's little
upsets me.
thing. If you played the
No, it does.
if you played the original game where like your bow and arrow lets you like zoom towards enemies at a certain point and you
Yeah.
can like cut off their heads and stuff. So
Right.
in battle, you upgrade that ability and you can like point your arrow at a dragon, and once you've like weakened it enough, you can like take control of it.
It's Pokemon. Got it.
I mean, pretty much, yeah. It is basically like having Charizard, flying around on Charizard.
And he's right. There's like point A, point B, point C kind of thing that you have to go take. And
Yep.
like that's
Yeah.
how you like move forward in the assault on the
Gotcha.
keep.
Yeah, it's basically like controlling the points. There are 3 points in the fortress you have to control, and all those points are guarded by the war chief's, minions, sort of as bodyguards. And again, like the original one, they have all their little weaknesses and strengths. So, like, one might be scared of fire. Oh, look, there's a convenient like barrel next to him. You shoot it, blows up. He gets really scared and performs worse in battle.
These guys are so scared of bees and
Yeah.
the whole thing.
Oh
Okay.
yeah. So that whole mechanic and feature and stuff is still there. And then after you like take over the fortress, you have to go 1-on-1 against like the big bad war chief. And of course, like for some reason, at least in our demo, your buddies can't accompany you. They just stay outside and they're like, "We'll let Talion handle this."
It's a Dragon Ball Z fight. Oh, it's
yeah,
one-on-one.
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's not even 1-on-1. See, this is where it sucks.
Oh.
Okay, so you'd think, okay, it's going to be, mono Uric, whatever.
Correct. Yeah.
But it's not, because he has like his whole little squadron there, and they constantly regenerate. I killed that squad like 3 times. They kept coming back. There are archers on the balcony in this throne room who are firing down at you. It is a very one-sided fight, and I got my ass handed to me. That man, or that Uric, beat my head in with a bone.
I feel like the regenerating orcs, that kind of nullifies the appeal and thrill of the entire Nemesis system. Even in the first game, like when you would kill somebody, then they would come back. It would just deflate it a little bit much. Like I just want like consequences to every action.
Right.
And just having regenerating fortresses.
I mean, some of the bugs associated with that in the first game were hilarious though. Like there was one orc I remember, because I reviewed the game for pace and they hadn't patched it yet. And there was one orc that I killed, that cut his head off, cut his head clean off. It went flying off a bridge, and that orc kept coming back, but without his head. Like I'd see him, like he'd just be walking around. I was like,
But I love
"This is
that
the greatest."
the camera still zooms in. I'm like, oh, I remember you, Italian.
Yeah.
People don't realize that was like the orc wizard. Like, yeah, no, I.
Is it lore, Miller?
Let's say it is. I mean, we might as well.
All right, Miller, please
at this
explain.
point.
As-
It's not worth it.
no,
man.
I really want to know. Like, I remember on the Skyrim cover story trip, Todd Howard's like, everybody loves dragons. No one's ever going to get sick of dragons.
No, it's not that I'm sick of dragons. I like dragons. I just think.
He's a purist on the lore.
Explain why dragons and calling them dragons is a real issue.
Again, this is.
Miller, we just talked about weapon slots for 45 minutes. We can talk about dragons for
All
2.
right, so in Lord of the Rings, it's a little weird that you would be just kind of summoning up some dragons, because like dragons in Lord of the Rings have a weight and a majesty and a power to them that takes them beyond that scope. Now that said,
it's like just saying like there's like a gray wizard just flying around.
yeah, like
this keep.
just summon
It's
some
just- yeah.
Gandalfs over. Like that's like that
That
within
is-
the lore.
yeah,
Now,
yeah.
Because they're all like smog. They're all like noble, smart
well, not all
things.
of them are, but like it's just kind of weird. But that's okay. I mean, it really is.
There's
Because
now 2 rings of power too. So
This is-
I mean,
this is my point.
There's
Like,
multiple steps
let's
to this.
go build another ring of power is such an is so sort of absurd within the like any sort of real view of the Lord of the Rings fiction. But the reason I keep saying it's okay, don't worry about it, is that like one should not be approaching this game that is about leading orcs as a human through Mordor, like taking down fortresses and stuff like that. I mean, we've already crossed over a threshold of
Right.
like, let's just have some fun with this. Like, these are guys, like we have some fun homages to the Lord of the Rings fiction, and let's not maybe take it too seriously.
Yeah, it's weird because it's always felt like a officially licensed fan fiction to me. Like that is
I
the
think-
vibe of that work. Like,
But Miller, you were so on that first game's
I
cover
know.
story. You were diving so deep into the Silmarillion with those guys. Like, that
That's-
was the appeal for you.
It was, and I will say that some of that has been, after I played that final game, it was a little lost on me, some of that stuff, because it felt like they'd gone a little bit off the deep end of like, we're just gonna do whatever we want and not be bound by the fiction. And again, not to sound like broken record, that's okay. The goal for developers should be to make the best game they possibly can.
Is it just that they're straddling this kind of middle ground of it's taking in between, it's like in between Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, but not really?
I can't
Is that
believe
what
you didn't
bothers
say
you?
Middle Earth. That just seemed like
Middle Earth, middle ground. Is that what bothers you? It's like go all in or go all out?
I don't know that
I mean, haven't they already gone all out already? I mean, I kind of feel like when you make a second, I mean, at this point, it'd be like the last boss battle is Orc Ball. You know what I mean? Where they play. I mean, like it's gotten to the point of like it doesn't really matter.
I think
right?
it would be fine if the end of this game was like you just kill Sauron. Like it doesn't matter.
Just Inglorious Bastards'
Like
face off?
like Fellowship of the Ring just doesn't exist, and like Frodo and the Ring, it doesn't matter. Like let's just it'd be cool. Let's just kill Sauron. Like Inglorious Bastards, like kill Hitler. You know what I mean?
It's probably the smartest route they could take.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it would be sort of ridiculous and over the top, but that would sort of be fine. I mean, I think I bristle a little bit because unlike a lot of fictions, there is a sort of for people who like Lord of the Rings, there is a kind of like
Stephen Colbert would freak out if he saw this game.
yeah.
Don't ever show him Lord of the Rings online. His head would explode.
There's a sort of sacredness to the Lord of the Rings fiction and what Tolkien's original intent was, and exploring issues around like the nature of power and
describing breakfast.
Describing breakfast and describing trees. I mean, this is a dude who was very contemplative and thoughtful about life in a post-World War II world and was using fantasy to explore issues of peace and war and what was good and what was bad and that kind of stuff. And when you have something like Shadow of War where our main character runs around chopping dudes' heads off and stuff, it feels like it goes a little bit away from that vision, maybe.
No, I can see that.
And that's again, that's okay. Like that's the game. Like that game is certainly a lot more exciting because you're chopping dudes' heads off than it would be if you were a hobbit walking through the forest, taking some time to observe how pretty the mountains are.
And
even though that is what makes the novels oftentimes really beautiful.
They made that Hobbit game on GameCube. You can go back and play that.
Right,
It's
yeah,
that
like
true experience.
Yeah, I feel like that sort of game has already been addressed within Lord of the Rings. And like, have you guys seen Last Action Hero with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Yes,
like the Hamlet bit? That's what I think about when I think about Shadow of Mordor. It's like, sure, this is just completely, I agree with Miller. It's like thematically against like Lord of the Rings. It's very bristly, but at the same time, that doesn't stop it from being entertaining. Like just ludicrously entertaining.
You guys had a good time with it then, outside of the ever-generating enemies?
Oh man, I have issues with it. I think because we only got to do one time through, and it's super chaotic. Like the battles in the original one, even when you got really good at it, could be complicated because you'd have like 20 orcs around you. This one, I think there were like 40 around me at one point, and like a town square, and I couldn't tell what was going on, and like I accidentally killed 3 of my Yerks because the friendly fire was turned on.
Do you think it's just a matter of being thrown into a demo though, and not
that's what I'm hoping. Yeah. But like also there was input lag, which for a game where the combat is rhythm, like it's straight up, it's that Batman Arkham sort of thing where like if I push a button, Talion needs to react immediately. And if he doesn't and he screws up, that's not on me, but it still like really gets in the way of my experience. And that happened quite a bit. And I talked to some other journalists and like that was happening to them. Like at the setup, and there was some lag. So I'm hoping like final release, it's much more polished, but just the chaos of it. It's so overwhelming. I don't even know really what to think about it. I enjoyed bits of it, but it was stressful. Like it was a stress I was not used to in that kind of game.
But I would agree. I mean, I think like I've seen a Fortress Assault twice now. You know what I mean? I saw one at GDC in the theater, and then I saw this one, and it was the same kind of thing of like, well, there's just a lot going on. I don't know what I'm supposed to be like focusing on. What because they're playing the game and they've done it a million times. Like, oh well, there's a wall here. I just turn around, and I grab this orc, and I shoot this ball, and it blows up the whole wall. We're doing good. We're going great. And then like they move forward, and you're like, whoa, okay, all right. Like it's very quick, and you're not even like playing the main character that much. You know what I mean? I always felt like he was kind of like not until the end. Like what I mean? Like you're kind of just fighting. You get to the guy, you either take control of him or kill him, and then go to the next spot, go to the next spot, go to the next spot. They all happen very quickly, very chaotic, and I was just like, I don't get the game, I guess. You know what I mean? I get the Fortress Assault, and I get how all those characters in the Nemesis system play a role, and how once you take it over, you put this guy in charge, and it changes the world around him. Though they didn't give us examples of how it changes the world, in the kind of open world. I mean, they seem interesting, but as on their own, they don't seem very interesting to me.
It was a very unideal sort of environment for that session too, because like Andy says, we were constantly being propelled, and like the people who were demoing it for us were trying to be helpful, but at the same time, it was like, do this. I'm just like, let me figure it out, man. Let me take some time.
Yeah, that's the game apparently at that point. You know what I mean? Like it's weird.
The more game's fun is reliant on systems. I think the harder it is for it to demo well.
Oh yeah, like Prey. Oh man,
like any game where you're fundamentally building a web of sort of experience and knowledge that fuels the fun of the subsequent game. Trying to take that out and being like, okay, well, it's not the beginning of the game because that's kind of boring. It doesn't really show anything. It's not the end of the game because we don't want to spoil that. We're just kind of somewhere here in the middle, and like, here you go. Like that's really hard to do, and I feel for anybody who's making that kind of game, of which at this point
there's a lot of them.
There's a lot of most AAA games are very reliant on complex systems, and so I think it's hard these days to make an E3 demo or whatever show demo that speaks to the strengths of your title. When you're saying, like, fundamentally, you got a guy for 10 minutes and he's maybe going to be paying attention, maybe not. I mean, he's probably going to be talking to his friend while he's doing it. This better be fun, though. What do you do with that as a developer? And by the way, you also need to ship your game in 3 months.
I think my biggest concern with this game still is, because I enjoyed the combat when it was working still, like, Mordor's combat has always been satisfying to me in the same way that Batman's combat was, because they're basically the same system, just with more gore, which I love. I love chopping heads off. It's great. I don't know anything about that open world yet, and like that was the big bummer about Mordor for me. Was like, oh yeah, like I get it. I get why this has to be that way, but that doesn't stop it from being uninteresting. Yeah. And honestly, I want to see what this open world is actually like. I want to like inhabit it, but there's nothing.
They had a trailer last week kind of showing off just environment fly-throughs, and it certainly has more variety than I expected in the look of it. But yeah, activities, I have no idea what it's going to be like out there.
Yeah, and it's such a hard thing to do now for like, I feel like so many developers of open world games, like it's such an easy thing to fudge up, and when it does work, it's surprising. Like, I still can't explain why Breath of the Wild's open world works. Like, because most of it's empty.
Don't ask Andy about that.
Yeah. Oh, boy. But, like, it does work for me. Like, it does. Yeah. There's, like, a sense of discovery around every corner.
Any rational, sane human being, it works for him. It works for him hard. Absolutely, JV.
Andy's allowed to have his opinion.
I didn't say I hated the game.
I know. Sorry, you gave us an inch on this podcast. We have to throw you under the bus.
But it's like that thing, like, if you were to ask me, like, okay, what is an open world? What makes a good open world? I know it when I see it, So
yeah.
I hope
you're a big help with your. I know when I see it.
Yeah, I hope Shadow of War's open world is good and fascinating, or at least better than Mordor's. But that's the biggest thing I'm worried about.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for informing us, JV.
Yeah.
Do you and Miller want to simultaneously clap out of here?
All right, Miller, you ready? A one, a two,
a three.
Hey, welcome, Elise Favis.
Hey.
And Kyle Hilliard.
Hello.
Out of the control room, onto the mic. Kyle, let's start with you. Let's talk about Rime.
Rime.
This is a game that's been in development for a while. They showed it, and initially everyone's like, oh, this is Eco meets Wind Waker. This is the game I always wanted. And then I think they realized that making Eco meets Wind Waker is really hard.
Yeah.
But now it's out. Is it that?
No.
Okay.
It's not really any Wind Waker outside of the visuals, but there's definitely like, it's somewhere, I think I even said in my review, it's somewhere between Eco, Journey, and The Witness. It's kind of like all three, like somewhere in the middle of all three of those games. And it's not quite as open as I expected. I don't know. It's like, it is a series of large levels where I thought maybe it was like one big world. So, and each of those levels are pretty distinct and different. So the stuff that we've seen, which is just like that first level, it changes pretty dramatically as you go forward.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. And I mean, you compare it to some amazing games. Is it up there?
It's good. I gave it an 8, and that comparison is still true. Like I totally stand by that comparison to those three games, but it kind of feels familiar for those games. Like when I started, I was like, I kind of feel like I've played this sort of abstract, kind of puzzly, I don't really know what's going on yet type of game
a lot lately.
You just played Last Guardian not that long ago.
Yeah, like which is it's like you wake up on a beach and you don't know what's going on, and I feel like I've started a number of like indie style games.
No
that
way.
Yeah. You don't know what's going on. You don't have memory or anything like that.
Your memory's gone?
Can you-
That's so weird.
Can you think of like one thing that makes it stand out a little bit that's different?
The end, which
Okay.
I'm not going to spoil anything, but like I went in sort of with like as I kind of played the first couple hours, I was like, all right, I'm enjoying this. It kind of reminds me of Journey. I don't really see myself getting an ending that wraps everything together in a nice way. I think it's just going to be kind of ambiguous and leave it up to me, which I like that kind of story. But Rime ends in such a way where I had it was really cathartic. It really affected me a lot.
Tears.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that is what, like, it is worth playing it to the end. I actually wanted to go back and restart after I finished the game.
It seems like the story is like very minimalistic though. So do you find it really starts to come and tie together by the end?
It comes into focus in a big way in the final moment.
Yeah, it was crazy because I mean, you were playing it at your desk and we were asking you a bunch about it, and you're like, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
We'll see where it goes. And then it seems like I saw the final review score and was like, that something must have changed along the way at some
like
point here.
the end is a big part of it. Like I really like how that game ended a lot.
Wow. Is it out now?
It comes out tomorrow. It comes out Friday. Xbox One, PC, and PS4, and then Switch is like a vague quarter 3 this year.
The old quarter 3 eventually will port to Switch window.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you recommend it to fans of the eco style game?
Yeah. The puzzles are a shortcoming of the game. They're not really amazing. Like I more often felt stupid for not seeing the obvious solution than I felt smart for figuring something out.
And you're a hound for puzzles.
I love puzzles.
You're a effing maniac.
That's what they call me, the puzzle maniac. But yeah,
Has anyone ever called him the Puzzle Maniac?
No one's ever talked to
I just
Kyle.
called myself the puzzle. Does that
doesn't-
count?
You can't name yourself the Puzzle Maniac. Someone has
Well,
to
you
give that
just
to you.
did.
Let's leave it to the commenters.
Oh,
All right, maybe we have to.
Let's shift over to the perception maniac herself, Elise.
Yeah.
I think we talked about this game in a preview state at some point, right?
Yeah, well, where did I see it? I saw it at GDC. I played it
Okay.
over there for the first time. Yeah, and I reviewed it, and I enjoyed it a lot.
So perception, I remember you play as a blind person.
Yeah.
What else we
so
got? What is this game?
It's a horror game.
Oh.
It's actually by a company called the Deep End Games, and they're ex-BioShock developers coming from Irrational. So you play as a young blind woman named Cassie, who is haunted by this image of a house that she sees in her dreams. And she goes to this haunted house, basically, in search of the truth and why it's been haunting her. And so you're probably wondering, like, how the hell does this work if you're a blind person?
Yeah.
But basically you see, like, I use kind of air quotes for that, because you see through echolocation. So
Does she make the sounds?
So the thing is, she has a cane with her, right? So she taps her cane. Every time you do that, you kind of have a bit of a visual cue for everything around you. But it's like everything is kind of like this bluish hue, and difficult to see is all like crude outlines. And you're making your way through this house, but like every time you use echolocation, you're also attracting the attention of the monster called the Presence. So you have to be, it's like a kind of interesting game of hide and seek where you have to be very careful about how much you use, and like you want to explore because you want to find out the story of what's going on, but at the same time you have to be careful of how much you use it.
Does it work just as a horror game? Is it? I'm trying to figure out where on the spectrum between like artsy fartsy and horror experience is this game?
It's like
That classic spectrum.
it's interesting because like I don't find it incredibly scary. It's more like unsettling and spooky. Like you find out the kind of like morbid stories of these past inhabitants that lived there, and like how they met their kind of grisly deaths.
Edith Finch.
It's a lot like Edith Finch in that way, and I don't want to spoil a lot of like what those stories are. It's really cool to figure it out yourself. But yeah, it's kind of like it's like a mix of Edith Finch, a mix of like Gone Home. Like it's very exploration driven, but also with like a horror element.
So what is the balance though there? I mean, when you describe that as a like, I use the cane, it draws danger,
Sure.
but it's also it's my eyesight, right?
Yeah.
How is that balance? That sounds very difficult to make. I mean, like that's
It is. I mean, honestly, there were times where I did get a little bit frustrated because I was like, I want to explore this room better. And if I use my cane too much, then I'm worried, if something's going to come after me. I mean, if you hide, you can wait it out and then he'll go away. But yeah.
Sitting and doing nothing is never a good solution, though. You know what I mean? I'm saying that's trying. You know what I mean? That sounds, the game sounds interesting to me, but I'm also, that worries me as a way to navigate the world.
Totally.
But you felt comfortable with it. At the end, you would say, good move.
Yeah, I think it's balanced well enough that you're able to navigate like well enough through the world and not like there's enough paranoia, but it doesn't hamper you too much.
Okay, all right, that's good. All right,
It goes beyond just bullet point that grabs attention. It's like, oh, it's the blind person game. Got it.
Yeah.
It's weird that this game came out within a couple weeks of Scanner Sombre. Did you guys see that
Oh
game at all?
yes,
JD
yes.
reviewed it.
I've seen some gameplay.
It's like
of
you
that.
explore a cave with like a device and you ping to like fill the
Yeah,
exploration
it's kind of
space.
like
Yeah.
Unfinished Swan and kind of
Yeah.
like Scanner
Yeah.
Sombre, that kind of where you're kind of like making the world like I don't know how to say
You're
it,
like
kind of
you're
painting
building the world
a little
around
bit.
you, kind of.
I really
Yeah.
like the mechanic
Yeah.
a lot.
It's going to be
Mhm.
funny in a couple weeks on YouTube when there's a bunch of videos for Perception that's like labeled as 4K 60 FPS gameplay footage of Perception.
I mean,
Anyways,
I'll be
that's just
honest,
my
the
own
game
thought.
itself doesn't look that pretty.
that very much was
Like-
your own thing. Yes.
Like graphic fidelity is not Perception's strong
Right,
point, but
right.
I don't think it has to be.
Do you
So-
what score did you slap on this thing?
8.25.
Oh wow. So better than Rime in every conceivable way.
I knew he was going to say that. Wow.
You act like we are personally invested in these games.
I understand.
Rime has to be better than Perception. That's very important.
Awesome. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah,
One of the more unique experiences of the year for sure.
yeah. I thought it was pretty cool.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Elise, would you want to stick around and do some great emails?
Sure.
And Kyle, would you want to get the hell out of here so we can get Wade back to do some great emails?
Yeah.
Get out of here, Kyle.
All right. Bye, Kyle. And welcome back to the Game Informer Show. We have some great emails that people sent in to podcast@GameInformer.com. We're all going to remember each and every one, memorize the names. Then we're going to choose our absolute favorite, and we're going to ship them out something really nice. Wade, you've been sitting in the booth for so long recording these podcasts.
It's true.
What percentage of the time do people, do you think, pay attention and trying to remember which is their actual favorite versus mad scramble? Last one.
Well, you do every time, but I think you have a little advantage because you read them all.
That's true.
Probably 1% of the time.
1% of the time. All right, well, let's fix this now. Now that you're on mic, let's make sure we pay attention.
Okay, good.
Some feedback
What's
first.
happening?
We have to remember the names.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well, we tried. Paul Arias writes in with a thorough explanation, which I really loved. A lot of comments we're talking about our discussion about Injustice 2, because, we think we know DC's universe, but when it comes to Arcanius and, Blue Beetle, we were a little confused about some of those characters, and we're also confused about why Harley has so many hyenas in the game. And so Paul writes in, the Joker's hyenas have also appeared in Batman the Animated Series, the Batman comics, but remained unnamed or simply referred to as babies by Harley Quinn. Joker mentioned their names as Bud and Lou in the new Batman Adventures. Bud and Lou also appear in the New 52 continuity. Also apparently in Batman Arkham City, Joker... Harley has them stuffed? Where you run into the Penguin. Anyways, there's a whole explanation. I guess hyenas have been a big part of the Joker and Harley Quinn's lore. Andy, don't look at me like that. It's informative. David from Austin, Texas says, hey, I need you guys to do podcasts every night of E3 so badly. I'm going to be working on an archaeological dig and will be unable to watch streams and coverage of E3 for the first time in at least a decade. Having your podcast to listen to stay caught up on things would be an absolute lifesaver. Thank you, David. That sounds like a fun job. I got a lot of...
Archaeological dig.
That's really cool.
For memory
Wow.
cards? I don't understand. But yeah, a lot of people wrote in saying, like, because last week we talked about whether or not it'd be spamming the feed if we posted one from every night of E3 of the GI show. But at least the people that are, motivated enough to write in, they all said, go for it, spam the feed. So there's going to be a lot of episodes that week, but it'll be a lot to talk about. It should be fun. Francis from San Diego says, here's a question. How do you plan for E3 individually and as a group? Does Dan Tack have a checklist of things to bring? Does Kyle bring his 3DS for Street Pass? Is Joe going to bring a full suit of armor to defend against all the Breath of the Wild fans? How do we plan for E3, Andy?
Poorly.
Great. It's a lot of emails, a lot of scheduling, trying to map out on a Google Calendar.
Yeah, we have this whole like collaborative Google Calendar that we use, which gets kind of messy by the end of it. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been years where we've made packets and done everything, and really tried to plan ahead. I'm a poor leader, probably in the sense of like, you can plan everything. I feel it all goes to crap the second you get to E3. I mean, I think you kind of plan the bumpers within you're going to play with rather than like a real schedule kind of thing. So, I feel like you get a framework and you're good.
Yeah.
You can kind of go from there because you get there and you think, oh, I'm going to go do this or I'm going to go do that. And then you kind of go like, wow, they announced this game, or I need to go see this, or hey, you would love this, or hey, you got to go do this. So it kind of all flies out the window, a bit. So, E3 is E3. I mean, I think that's why I hate it and I love it at the same time.
Sure.
Yeah, you've been to every one.
Everyone.
Has your plan evolved over the decades about how to approach it?
No, I think that's where like Reiner comes in and goes like, Andy, we're not going to not plan nothing. You know what I mean? Like, which tends to be my approach. But it's just the show's changed so much. I mean, it's just not the same show as it once was. I mean, it just is completely different. So, it's the same in that, like, well, I guess this year we have consumers coming in, but it just depends on the games, depends on the mood, depends on what kind of games people are playing, like how long it takes to make games. It's just a different world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's fun. We have a meeting where we kind of list all the publishers or developers that we know are going to be there and try and divide it off. Like, okay, who's the best breakout team to go see Konami stuff? Who's the best for this? Who's the best for this? That's always fun, just dividing up the entire staff versus like, okay, what publisher are you specialized towards? Joe and Kim, you got to cover Square. What else we got?
It is funny, though, when it comes up with like, oh, we just got a call from them. It's another RPG. Okay, I know your schedule's busy, but like it's like you kind of all the RPG people in the room are like, oh no, I know I'm getting that assigned to me.
Yeah.
It's just kind of the doom. Like Dan Tack, who's staying behind this year.
Yeah.
Which is I don't know if I'm spoiling anything.
No.
And he's going to be manning our video team back here. Like he sees a lot of the PC games normally, and so like that'll be something at E3 this year that like without Dan, we're going to be grouping to fill the Dan void.
Yeah, when somebody talks about something being hex-based or roguelike, everyone's going to zone out. Stuart Blessman writes in, hey guys, happy Memorial Day weekend. Same to you. With the release of the new teaser image for Far Cry 5 with its loaded symbolism coming from a French or Montreal-based developer, I'm interested in what story or message they'll be conveying with this new game set in America. What other games have been developed by non-American studios that are set in or comment upon America as a nation? So that game developer perspective from looking into America. It seems like a lot of people don't realize Rockstar is a bunch of Scottish folks.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, some of them live here. The primary worked on a lot of the game as well. But yes, the game was mostly developed in Scotland. Yeah,
the boots on the ground are in Scotland.
Correct. Yeah, a lot of the production. So, but I mean, a lot of the story was written, in New York City,
right?
And I think Ubisoft always points that out too, that they spend a lot of time on location, going to take a vibe kind of flavor from wherever they're going to, make their game or have it be based if they want that level of realism to it. So I don't think it's necessarily impossible. I think the hardest task that's always in front of anyone is that like the difference between like I'm trying to make something that's real about the people and the place and something that's a game, right? I mean, because ultimately in Far Cry, you're going to get machine guns and grenades and like bazookas and I don't know, fly around in like a little gyrocopter and throw bombs on people.
As you put it, a dog's going to steal your gun.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to get a little like crazy zany at some point. You know what I mean? To be like, are they going to be able to keep the realism of Montana people, and America correct? I mean, I think the answer there is no.
It's already a cartoon.
I mean, I think that it's always going to be a little far fetched. It's interesting to see those kind of like odd takes on like that kind of Americana, right, in this case.
Right, yeah.
And I think it's always interesting too. I look at it at this game too. I think it's interesting in that like a lot of times in games, I go to places where I've never been and I don't think about like their like what the way things really are. Right? I mean, like the game kind of tells me, oh, hey, you're here in Bangladesh, which I've, never been to. This is what Bangladesh is like. This is what the Bangladesh people, they either live in hovels or in towers or whatever that, however their lives are. I don't generally know, right? I just don't know that much about that society or those people. And so sometimes I go look it up to see what's up if I'm really interested in the world. But a lot of times those games just define those things to us. But I think it's going to be interesting in this case because a lot of people know a lot of stuff about America. Maybe not about Montana in specific. So, I mean, like they're definitely walking that line of like there's more data out there. No diss to anyone from Bangladesh kind of thing, but just more data about like what America is, both real and perceived, right? You know, like everyone thinks everyone in Texas has cowboy boots and a big hat on. Probably also from Montana a bit as well. But
yeah, the thing about Montana's setting is I'm just trying to figure out, like, I don't think people realize how flat a majority of Montana is. So they're just going to do the mountainous regions. It's going to be like a quadrant of like the map that's going to be just flatland, and then just get into crazy nearing Yellowstone style environments. I'm really excited to see more of it. But Elise, as somebody from Montreal, are you hip to Montana?
I don't even know to say that question, but I can't wait to hear the answer.
Well, you know, to be perfectly honest, I mean, I'm never super hyped when I hear another game's taking place in the U.S. just because I feel like it's not the most. Okay, well, let me word this carefully. I think there are several other places that could be more interesting and diverse.
Just more exotic,
just have so much,
right?
More exotic. Like,
well, at least
that's
it's
what I really
not
like
New York
about the
City or
Uncharted
something.
series and stuff. Sorry?
It's like, it's a new setting within America. I mean, not too many games have been set in Montana.
Sure. I think it could be interesting. I think the like religious symbolism stuff is what's most curious to me. I'm like, how how extremist is it going to be, and or how, I don't know. I'm really curious about where they're drawing the line, and or how nuanced it's going to be. I think that's what I'm most curious about. Americana stuff, less so.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, it's interesting from a Far Cry perspective, right?
Yeah, that's
just looking at like the Far Cry 4 art, had the villain sitting there on his throne,
Well, originally had like a decapitated Buddha statue, which they then removed because they got so much flack for.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, but that brand and that team, I remember that was a big thing with Far Cry 4 Cover Story Trip, is they like being the rebels. They see themselves as the pirates within Ubisoft, and so this is edgy territory.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's going to be protests and outrage about it. We'll see what the big reveal's like. We'll see more at E3 and stuff. But as far as like the outside perspective, I always think of Ubisoft's The Crew when they did, drive across the entire country, and their version of St. Louis. It said like, "Welcome to St. Louis," but instead of just putting ST, they spelled out Saint. Because like, well, it's French, of course, it's St. Louis. And then they patched that out, so it was just ST.
Well, didn't that game also have like Minneapolis and like Chicago on the map? Like they literally had like the geography wrong. You know what I mean? It was like
compacted everything together in a weird way. There's a giant statue of a cow roughly where we all lived. And that was about the representation of Minnesota.
Yeah,
so
thanks.
It's cool. Let's see. Zephyr from South Florida says, "Hey, Ben and crew, hope y'all are having a fantastic day." That's good. That's good. I started thinking about today how usernames have become an intrinsic part of our identities with such a social media based society. What were some of the usernames you used back in the day that you look back on now and say, "What was I thinking?"
Oh God, so many.
Yeah, which ones jump out?
Oh dear. Well, one of them was so terrible. It was Cool Girl.
This cool no number.
No. Okay.
Why would you ever change from Cool Girl?
No, it gets worse, you guys. It was Cool Girl with a K, like cool with a K, and then girl with a U. That was an underscore. Oh, it was great. It was really bad. Okay, so I had that one. I was Whisperings for a while, which wasn't as bad.
That's cool.
Yeah, I thought that was a cool one, maybe. And my first RuneScape username I made with like my neighbor, and we made it together, and I don't know why we decided to call ourselves this, but we were Girls, like California girls. I don't know, it was really, I was like 10 and apparently
from
I thought
Montreal.
that was cool.
Again, look into that American culture from outside. Well, is this connected at all to, I just heard a legend around the office that you were super into like early online MMOs like Club Penguin and stuff?
Where did you hear that?
I don't remember.
I am known to play really terrible. I was known to play really terrible, like browser-based MMOs.
What was the worst?
Oh, I don't want to talk about it.
All right, moving on. I guess Andy's were in the
Cool
magazine.
Girl doesn't want to talk about it.
Okay, well, I mean, if you really want to know, I'll talk about it.
Is there anything interesting?
Have you ever heard of Habbo Hotel?
No.
It sounds amazing, though.
Let's all go. Is it shut down now?
No, it's still around.
Okay.
I also played Puzzle Pirates.
What's Habbo Hotel? You just walk around a hotel?
Habbo Hotel. It's honestly really like a glorified chat room where like it's a virtual world where you just walk around in different hotels and you play like little games like Falling Fernie, where you decorate your different rooms with like furniture, but then you also play this game called Falling Fernie where like furniture just appears out of nowhere and you have to go and sit on the furniture faster than everyone else. I'm gonna stop talking now.
No,
That sounds good. They need
not.
that in Elder Scrolls Online Morrowind, I think.
Yeah.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah. Puzzle Pirates is actually good though.
That was the good game
That was
within
the-
Habbo Hotel.
No, this is a separate thing. This
Oh.
is a separate MMO.
My
Yeah.
God.
It
With an
was
amazing
great.
name. I mean, Puzzle
Yeah.
Pirates is an
I was
amazing name.
I was like fantastic at carpenting.
You know, we brought Andy back to his old EverQuest save for an episode of
That's
replay.
right. What was the name of your character again?
You know, this is not like that we have to reveal things about ourselves. But yeah, it was I was Hemingway, I believe.
Hemingway,
So-
that's right.
Famous author.
Oh.
Classic episode.
And all
of
nicknames in
Replay.
the magazine will not be mentioned from Andy's perspective. It was
correct.
back in the day. What do you got, Wade?
My first username, which was made for RuneScape, also.
Hey.
Was, and it's a username I still use today for some things. It's Zelda Saver.
That's good. That's cute.
Is that like a reference to like
Zelda.
flavor saver?
No,
like
no,
a
like
mustache?
like
No, they just literally
no,
saving
like
Zelda.
yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
I was
okay,
like
okay,
I was
got
like
it.
11, and I needed a username. And that's the first thing that I thought of.
Oh God, reading those Link to the Past
better
Grimoire
than
cards,
Cool Girl.
getting very into them. I
You,
get
you
it.
know,
It's great
JB
Grimoire.
has a terrible one. I don't know if he'll hate me for.
Please, no, share it.
I've already shared it on Twitter anyway. But at one point, well, actually, I saw him log into like his PSN, and it was like his old email, and it was Video Game Master.
Effing dork.
And he was like, "Oh yeah, I thought it would like impress people." I'm like,
This guy must be good. He typed out the word master. Ugh, Yozetti is pretty stupid. I've stuck with it.
What does that mean?
"Yeah, what is that?"
Age of Empires 1, I'm sure I was an idiot and was like, what do you mean the name Ben's taken? What do you mean the name Ben Hansen's taken? The most common name in the effing world. It's like, I don't come up with the wackiest word that'll never be taken. And that's what I came up with. And then my old website was angelfire.com/BenjoKazooie, which was
All right.
pretty cool stuff. Anyways, Daniel Keelman has an interesting question. He says, longtime subscriber to the magazine, listen to every episode of the podcast, and seen every episode of Replay. And he's also a big fan of Twilight Highlight Zone and A Fire Inside Out. Wow, the offshoots. I was lucky enough to be published in Game Informer many moons ago when you used to have the fan-submitted greatest games of all time. I had a review of Donkey Kong Country 2 around 2000. Interesting. He says he's 31 years old now. He has a new job, first job, full-time video production. Basic question, what advice can you guys offer on starting a new job?
Ooh,
Andy, you've seen plenty of first-timers, new-timers here at GI. What are the big do's and don'ts early on in office life?
I mean, I would say, I mean, I guess it's kind of just try to learn the ropes as quickly as you can to try to, the quickest path to being helpful is the quickest path to being liked, I think.
and like show enthusiasm too. You know, I think that's a big part of it. Also,
Yeah.
seem like you're happy to be there and be respectful.
And make a good impression with the person in charge. I think that the first time I met Andy,
Oh, no.
I came in for an interview here, and I went into your office because I thought I was interviewing in your office, and I was like scouting some, like I was like trying to figure out angles, and you're just sitting at your desk. Like, what in the hell is this person doing in my office?
Yeah, because we had you like film a little example thing.
With Reiner, yeah.
Right.
And
but
their offices were next to each other, and I thought I was going to be in that one.
and he's just, all right, I guess someone's walking in.
By the way, this is not the first time something weird has happened in our office, so I was prepared.
I remember like my first day, because I had talked to Andy for the interview and stuff a couple times even. And so then I came in for my first day. It was like, well, time to hang out in the middle of the day. I'll go hang out with Andy, and just went and sat on his couch. And then I realized like that was a very strange thing to do, just to walk into the boss's office just to shoot the anyway, also a big thing is like being social, I think, out of the gate. Like right when you get to a new job, like if someone offers, hey, let's go out for drinks tonight, like take them up on that offer, because if you say no once or twice, you'll stop being invited to stuff. Basic stuff. Anyways, good luck on the new job there, Daniel. This is from Jeremy Bowl from Plainville, Michigan. He says, since the podcast is going to be 2 writers and 2 video people, he's right. On the show this week, I would like to know, what are your single biggest pet peeves you see in both writing and video production? P.S. When is there going to be a Persona 5 spoiler cast? Yeah, we should. I just don't know how many people have beat it. Do you know, Elise?
Sorry for
For
what was-
Persona 5?
Oh, oof, I haven't beat it. I'm
Yeah.
like midway.
So
Not many
yeah,
of us.
2019 we'll have that spoiler cast. It'll be really great. But common pet peeves. Wade, from the video angle, what comes to
Well,
mind?
actually, I can circle back to video, but I do have a pet peeve for writing.
Oh.
It's when it's really common now with online articles, and it's when people make one sentence paragraphs that should have been part of the previous paragraph.
Oh, that is
Okay.
annoying.
You know what I mean? Like, you guys seen that when they like are trying to make a point and then they work up to it and then they double space one sentence and then they move on.
Interesting.
And
All
it's
right.
It's dramatic effect.
sure,
really
but
works.
it's like
It's the way Hemingway would do it.
it's like
Come on.
to me it's like just writing in all caps. It's like, great, that's very proficient of you. But I'll circle back with video. 'Cause
yeah.
Mm.
So video, it's just simple stuff. I have had a rule for myself ever since I started editing video that I will never use the record scratch sound effect. I have been in dozens of situations where it's like it should be used here, but I will not cross that line of the to
Yeah.
stop the scene. That dumb joke, I cannot do it.
Do you think? Do you think?
You just did it.
well with my mouth?
Do you think
That was
kids
fun.
growing up now have no idea what that means or what's that is a reference
No,
to?
I think it's like the floppy disk save icon. Like it's just the sound of things stopping or the look
Yeah, I
of things
think it-
saving. You
yeah.
know.
It's iconic enough that people would get it.
Yeah. Also, to get really nerdy on video production, zooming over images, basically Ken Burns affecting, like
Mhm.
people botching the keyframe for that, Wade, where it's like it like will cut to the image and then it'll start moving, or like as it's fading out, you can see the image stop
Yeah.
moving before it finishes the fade out. Like not having that be completely smooth drives me insane.
Yeah, you do have very smooth transitions. Like when I'm editing,
Yeah,
sometimes
you do.
sometimes
Hey,
you'll
brother.
listen for the tiniest little click in an audio transition.
Yeah.
Speaking of audio transitions, one thing that's really popular with YouTube vlogs these days is people will cut mid-sentence for comedic effect, like start yelling something and then just cut before and go to the next thing before
Yeah.
they finish their sentence. I
You don't
know if
like
you've seen
that? That's my favorite joke, Wade. Like every once in a while, an E3 tour or some sort of, like, I don't know. Every once in a while in Game Forum's videos, it has happened. It makes me
Mhm.
laugh so hard. Like one time we were on a tour and it was Tim and Ben Reeves, and they were shaking hands with the Plants vs. Zombies zombie, and then the zombie just like lunged at Ben's head. And as he was chewing on Ben's head, just really quickly, Reeves just goes, ah! And then like cutting on that
No.
screen. That really makes me laugh.
No. It's a good technique, but I've seen it used very cheaply, I guess, in other people's videos.
Yeah, I mean that like jump cut YouTube
Mhm.
look. Yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
a certain style and flavor that I agree I'm not fully used to.
Mhm.
What do you guys got on the writing side?
Can it be like pet peeves about our own writing or stuff like
Sure.
that too? Okay. Well, like one thing that I find really annoying, like especially when transcribing an interview, I find, I'm definitely at fault for this. I think almost everyone is. Like when we talk casually, we speak in like very fragmented sentences, and sometimes trying to take those into putting them into like actual quotes in an article can be very annoying or tough, and being like, oh, like this is really interesting what he's saying, but he stops halfway talking, and
Yeah.
then like so half the time you're paraphrasing or you're figuring out how to do that. I find it,
Or writing the rest of the sentence basically for them.
or putting that in. Sure.
It's also hard to do that with video. Sometimes with interviews, we have to like edit articulation into sentences.
Yeah, because we are all bad speakers.
The secret to that, I remember I learned from an old producer when I first started doing video production, is he said, make it look like you're about to cut the person off. When they're saying something good, it seems like the opposite of what you should be doing. But if someone has a great sentence that you think is going to be like the perfect soundbite, like jump in like you're about to say something, and they'll wrap it up tight and put a nice close on it. Like just like put your finger out like like you're about to say something, and they'll get the message and be like, oh,
Is
gotta
it like
tighten this
that
up.
pressure maybe that
Yeah.
makes them?
Like, hey, let's put a bookend on this sentence clearly, and then
Interesting.
that leads to a nice punchy statement. But
I like that because
Or they just scream.
well, no,
sure, well, that's also fun. Andy, yeah.
it'll also give them some like energy when they finish. Sometimes I've had people just kind of trail off and like lose energy by the end of the
Right.
sentence.
Yeah,
So
that's
they-
low
A
energy.
lot of people do that.
Huh?
Yeah.
Andy, any pet peeves?
No.
Great. Perfect. Florum writes in, says, many of the studios responsible for my favorite games, Deus Ex, Bioshock, for example, have struggled to sustain themselves and have been disbanded. Given GI's access through cover stories, have you encountered or noticed any qualities that the everlasting studios, BioWare, Bethesda, Square, even Double Fine for a smaller studio they point out, which, yeah, it's interesting, have, which make them more sustainable and less susceptible to breaking down? I'm working under the assumption that financial success isn't the only factor. What does it take for a studio to stick around? We've seen so many come and go over the years. What are like the common themes there? What do you think, Andy?
I think almost with every successful business, regardless of games or whatever, I mean, certainly a passion for what they do is a big part of it. I mean, like, I think you can see great studios tend to have like you can see that they want it really bad and they're prepared to make the sacrifices to get it. But I think more importantly too is I think that the teams that do well, they get along. They have a common goal. You know what I mean? They know what they want to make. They know who they are. I mean, like when you talk about like Double Fine makes Double Fine games, right? And it's not by accident that that it's not because they made a bunch of games that now we call them Double Fine games. It's because they knew what they were doing, and like we know BioWare games, and you can kind of feel like that. And like Naughty Dogs, even though they've changed a lot over the years, right? There's something common in them. There's a commonality that you can pick from them, and that is not an accident, right? And I think even something like we talk about Horizon Zero Dawn. Like I always thought Guerrilla, was a great studio. You know what I mean? They never quite had the right game, right? I never really thought the other games were right for them.
Still really solid games, just not quite breaking through. Yeah.
Yeah, and like so, I mean, even though they weren't finding, let's say, even the financial success here. I mean, I don't know that those games made a ton of money. I mean, Sony
They must have. They made so many of them.
I think Sony wanted to be competitive in the person shooter market, and that was their way to do it. I think it started off as kind of a they have Halo. What do we have? Kind of thing, and it never reached that kind of level. But I mean, you see that success. I mean, when you talk to people from Bungie, it's the same thing. Like there's a lot of things that Destiny looks a lot like Halo, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that are common between those games, between those threads. But I think that's because they know what they like. A Bungie game when you play it. Like Blizzard games.
Like they have that signature.
Yeah,
feel.
And that's something that people can come in and understand and try to like expand upon and add their bit to it, right? They're not stationary either. They're always moving forward, always being smart, always trying to get better, and evolving, right? If anyone doesn't evolve, they're probably in big trouble. But they know who they are.
Yeah, for sure. You got to make that slight differentiation too between publisher-owned studios versus independent studios, because those big independents that have been around for a while are just fascinating. Like someone like Insomniac changing throughout the years and still being relevant today, working on Spider-Man, sometimes doing their own smaller projects into those bigger ones, or even a studio like Ready at Dawn. It's like, what a bizarre lineup of games they've created throughout their lifetime. But you just have to be that flexible and never, I guess, if you're that big and indie, bet the farm all on one giant project that'll never end. Or even someone like Remedy, another good indie example, right? Now they're working on, what did they announce? They're working on a multiplayer game. They had some big announcement recently, but we'll find out in the future, I'm sure. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, Bungie is the one that comes to mind for me. Pretty much what Andy said. You get the sense with every behind-the-scenes video that Bungie puts out that everyone on the team, at least that's visible, like really believes in what they're making, and you really get the sense that they're part of a team that is tightly knit, and despite their growing numbers, still believe in their product and believe in their community most of all, I think, because like the Destiny community is one of the strongest game communities I've been a part of and seen.
First, it's the best one I've ever dealt with, a Game Informer, for sure. Outside of the Overblood community, which is just the best of all time. But I mean, you say that it takes passion, but I've yet to meet a game developer that isn't passionate. I mean, so many studios crumbling. I'm sure they cared so much about the projects they're working on.
But I guess with Bungie too, going back to the community aspect, they've always loved their community and wanted to support their community. Throughout the whole time I've played Halo games, they've been really supportive of people enjoying the games, but also like doing cosplay videos and their own fan films and stuff, and promoting that, not getting caught up in IP battles with other people, like using their stuff and all that. So they love their fan base and their user base, and I think that feedback they get from them helps move them forward. Keep them sustainable.
I would agree that people are all generally passionate, but I think with a lot of people we talk to are passionate because they're the lead and that's like their vision that's being put through.
Right.
But I mean, it's important that like the artists, right? And I'm not talking about just like the lead artist believes in the vision, but like everyone believes in the vision. I mean, that's where the passion is. I think that's more of what I'm pointing to is not like, I mean, I've met plenty of developers who are like, yeah, our boss thinks this is a good idea. You know what I mean? And like, and they end up making pretty mediocre games, along this path when like not everyone is buying into what that vision is. And I think a lot of time those companies are very good about having not just their community, but the developer community that they're working with, that everyone's on the same page on what they're making and why they're making it and where it's going. I mean, a lot of these games, I've heard stories of just like, even the story itself, You know what I mean? They don't like it. Then it's stupid. You know, and like when you think what you're making is stupid, you're not gonna, you know, you're not making a great game. And I think that's important. And I think they talk about a lot about people having their own sense of value and their own ability to make that game better and push that game further. And I think the best studios enable all the people that work there.
Yeah,
you know, to do that.
Reese Levi from Sydney, Australia. He says he's upside down. Good stuff. This seems like a parody of an Australian email because he starts it with "good day," but hello. Thank you. I find it weird that the PlayStation's button layout involves X being the confirm select button while O is the back cancel button. Is it just me or does it make more sense for it to be the other way around?
Like Nintendo? Because Nintendo has it.
Well, no, I think he's saying the X and O thing, which he should move to Japan then, because it is the other way around in Japan.
Is it really?
And I don't know the history of why circle is yes throughout Japanese society, but that's the case. And then they swapped
You would
it.
think X would be no, or to exit something.
I guess X like the no-go.
Like you think of it
crossing the
on a
orange
PC or something, you know, you're clicking an X
That's
to
true.
exit a window.
But then I guess the logic for the rest of the world was X marks the spot, so X is confirm. I think that was the reason.
By the way, there's no logic in why those buttons are and what you do.
Really?
I know. I mean, I think the reason like X is the accept is that everyone, that's the button they touch first, and they want them moving forward. And it's just like they were like, oh, we could keep it as O, but it was like, oh, too many people went back, and we don't want them going back, so just change it to X. Like, I mean, the buttons make no sense. I mean, I play a ton of video games, and still like when you're like, push A and you're like, okay, am I on Xbox? Am I on, you know what I mean? Like, you have to think it through. I mean, Nintendo, all of them, they've all made no sense.
Press SL.
We push like an L3, an R3.
Oh,
I mean, like,
Sure.
there's all kinds of insanity when it comes to this stuff. It could be much clearer, make much more sense, but don't look for, at least I don't think there's any real history other here than just like, it's just like lazy. We came up with these symbols.
Lazy.
No, I mean, it's serious. I mean, like,
it probably does just come down to aesthetics. Like this looked cool, so let's use these symbols.
Yeah.
Or
yeah, I mean, you know, because Nintendo had a pretty established like A/B system that was everywhere, and then like what Sega Master System did an I and an II, right, to kind of like, because everyone had to be, you know what I mean? It's like everyone just like, I can't make the same controller as the other guy, so we ended up getting all these different controllers because you couldn't do the same thing. Or you know,
Was it the CDI that had the numpad, or was that the 3DO or the?
well, and
Jaguar?
television had a numpad way back when, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like going way back. I mean, they've all had like crazy, stupid things in controllers. I just think they went with what they thought would be like, oh, let's not do the same as them. We did this, right?
Now,
Hey, we didn't do the same as them. It's different. And like, I don't think it helped anyone with their like Viva la Différence.
What about the theory that Nintendo went with those for the Super Nintendo because of Star Wars, and it's the X-Wing, Y-Wing, B-Wing, A-Wing? I mean, it writes itself. Anyways, but Reese as
Do you have
asking,
any proof on that fake news?
No, I've just noticed. Nerds have pointed it out. Anyways, but Reese wants to know if you had to decide on a button scheme for a new console, would you stick with the familiarity of X, Y, B, A, or take a different path like Sony or Ouya did? Just stick with. Is it? What's the default?
They did OUYA, right?
Right.
Oh, that was
Of
awful.
course.
oh
God.
I don't have any problem with the ABXY.
Are we talking Nintendo ABXY or
Xbox.
Xbox?
Xbox has the best controller.
All right, there we go. Lock it in forever.
Okay.
All time. Let's see. Thomas from Pensacola, Florida says, I was listening to the personal top 5 RPG episodes, and he talks about how he played Chrono Trigger on iOS without any audio. Then, after hearing that discussion, he went back, played it again with music and sound effects, and said it felt like a completely different experience. I'd imagine for the better. What are some games that stand out to you guys where sound design and soundtracks made your experience with those games memorable?
Inside.
Oh,
For
yeah.
sure. That game is so dependent on sound and atmosphere.
That's true. Just hearing the dogs barking in
Or
the
BioShock.
background.
Yeah, BioShock. Any horror game, really.
That's really
BioShock is a big one.
atmospheric, Yeah.
Yeah.
Without the sound, BioShock just isn't the same game at all.
That's
you need
true.
That, like haunted house atmosphere vibe.
Yeah, it comes down to like the games you can't play while listening to a podcast or
Right.
being distracted anyway. Like Shadow of the Colossus, I figured like that sound design and not only is the
Oh,
soundtrack
yeah.
great, but just that feeling of isolation, like
And
hearing every
vastness,
footstep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
That's
gotta really soak in
so
that
true.
world.
Very true.
Andy,
No, I'm weird. I'm okay with running music while I have game sound and music running.
Yeah.
But I actually hate not have it. It really bothers me on every game. I can't.
Except Breath of the Wild, right?
No, I listen to the sound on Breath of the Wild.
oh good.
I do. I mean, I always want the game sound on. I think it's a part of every experience. I just, it doesn't even compute to me how you could play a game without it.
Like MMOs, even just grinding, everything.
Everything.
Man,
I have to have the music on.
that's hardcore. I like it. That's it. What do you guys like?
I like the username one.
I was leaning the username as well.
That was a funny one.
Yeah,
Sure.
Andy, thumbs up.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hamilton or whatever. Hemingway. There we go.
Old Hemingway himself. All right, Zephyr from South Florida. We'll check out something real nice. Thanks for writing in, everybody. As for now, stay tuned. We're going to be talking to Mr. PlayerUnknown himself all about the future of PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. So enjoy that. Brendan Greene, welcome to the Game Informer Show, sir.
Thank you very much.
What is your life like these days? What is it like to be in the center of this whirlwind?
Busy.
Okay, that makes sense.
I'm doing a lot of traveling at the moment, which, as glamorous as it sounds, is a little bit tiring. But I will never complain, ever. No, but it's been crazy. It's been a great year, 2 years for me. So, yeah, learning a lot and yeah, just a little bit astounded by the success we've seen.
Yeah, definitely. So you're in Korea now, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And so what are you doing on these trips? What do the trips entail?
It's mainly just going to conventions, talking with press, guys like yourself, and meeting fans and stuff like that. It's a nice thing.
Was it something that you were looking forward to? Is this the payoff, or would you rather be back working on the game?
Oh no, I mean, listen, I have a great team. You know, if I tried to work hard in the game, I'd probably ruin the game. You know, like the team I have, they're just fantastic. So it's a pleasure for me to go to these conventions and talk to people.
Yeah. So how did this whole thing start? PlayerUnknown, the entire name, the saga. What's just the very beginning of it for you?
So it started way back in Arma 2. I had a DayZ mod server, and back then my name was Captain Darling from Blackadder, and I was helping someone build a base on their server or something, and I just wanted to change my name for that server. And the default Arma player name is Player1. So I just deleted the 1 and put in unknown, and I was like, okay, that'll work. Didn't think about it twice. And then after I had made the DayZ Battle Royale mod, I was moving to Arma 3, and I was stuck for what to call it. I thought PlayerUnknown's Battle Royale sounded good, and called it that. Mainly because putting PlayerUnknown in front of something just stops any copyright problems. So, you know, I just didn't want to call it just Battle Royale. I wanted to call it something that there wouldn't be a problem with copyright. Same with Battlegrounds, for example. It's called PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds because Hearthstone Battlegrounds exists. A lot of other Battleground type titles exist. And I thought if we called it just Battlegrounds, we may have a problem with copyright or people trying to stop us getting a trademark on the name.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a strategic move, and it also kind of harkens back to some old great PC games, like the Tim Schafer, Sid Meier school of thought in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, it was never kind of. I get this a lot of like, why do you have your name on the thing? And it's like there's nothing ego based or anything. It was purely just done because originally it was called PlayerUnknown's Battle Royale, and I just didn't want to call it PlayerUnknown's Battle Royale. I wanted to call it like a unique name.
Yeah, for sure. So
now it's PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds.
You've been working for a while now on kind of filling in this, I don't know, more rapid fire, just the core of survival fantasy. And I'm just curious, what's your viewpoint? Why don't you think the AAA game space has kind of filled in on this core fantasy before? Why has it taken so long and has had to come up through the mod scene?
I don't know. I'm kind of happy that the AAA scene haven't really looked at Battle Royale games and kind of gone, let's make one. It's kind of left me with the space to make mine now. I mean, we've seen it with, I think, the Division Survival was a Battle Royale-esque type game. It was fun, but, I don't know. I think as well, maybe a lot of the bigger engines out there, maybe they can't handle 100-player servers on massive open worlds, or it would take a lot of work. we're really lucky using Unreal that, it's a fully open source engine, and we can, make the game we want to make. I'm not sure how many of the proprietary engines used by AAA titles can actually handle that number of players.
Sure, yeah. What's your viewpoint on just why this one took off in such a huge way this year? What was the catalyst? What's special about your ingredients compared to other ingredients out there?
Still trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I always say this, and I never mean to sound arrogant, but I always had faith in my game mode. I knew that, the Arma 3 model that I'd created with, the depth of loot and the more tactical, slightly slower paced battle royale, I always had kind of confidence that that would be a success. And, with H1, they took my idea, they simplified it a bit, made it a little bit more arcadey, and, it's seen great success. But it was never my vision for Battle Royale. And then when I came here to Bluehole, I really pushed the idea, like, this is what we wanted, like a more Arma 3 based tactical Battle Royale. And I think I think Battle Royale as a concept, I knew it would be successful, but this level of success we've seen has been, it's even blown me away.
What does that look like from your vantage point? Is it just a lot of strange invitations, a lot of just weird corporations trying to grab onto the success here? What's been the most interesting part of it for you?
Yeah, my LinkedIn has never been busier. Everyone and their mother is asking us for, partnership and stuff like that. But it's great. We've got a great executive producer in Chang-An Kim, and both of us have kind of a very similar vision where we're not, rushing into anything. Everything we're doing in baby steps, basically. And, it's why, we said a few weeks ago that, esports is not a priority for us at the moment. We're doing a lot of research into it. We're looking into it. We're trying to find what, all the organizations want, and, what the teams want from our game, and what our game needs to be a successful, esports platform. And, we want to do everything right and not rushing into anything. So, even though I do get bombarded with requests for stuff, we're really kind of looking at everything very slowly and calmly, and not trying to just rush into making rash decisions, basically.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to figure out, like, what's even the benefit of labeling your game an official esport game? I mean, you guys are already dominating Twitch. You're going to be dominating Twitch for, I'm sure, the rest of this year at the very least. So what's the upside of labeling or having a big stamp of, hey, we're an esport now?
Well, no, I mean, this is the thing. Like, from when I first created the Battle Royale game mode, I always wanted it to be an esport. That's been the big dream. But I know that, I can't force Battle Royale to be an esport. That it has to grow organically. We started off now with custom servers, and there's a few Japanese streamers and Korean streamers that have already hosted little leagues using our game, and that's what we want to try to foster, is that if we're going to focus on making the game competitive. There's no point in even trying to say that we're an esport if the game is filled with bugs and people can die from silly things. So, we're focused on making the game competitive, and then while we'll give the tools for creating esports, we have leaderboards, all this kind of stuff, and the observer camera. We really want to try to let it grow organically. If the community thinks this is a good idea, I think an esport will be born out of it. We just want to provide a pretty solid platform for any possible esport in the future.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. So you talk about LinkedIn blowing up. One of the strangest things was you guys posted the blog about, like, oh yeah, of course we're bringing it to consoles, working on Xbox One now, PS4 in the future. I just imagine that, one of the big two, at least, E3 would want to chamber that reveal. But you want to talk about just that reveal that, oh yeah, of course we're bringing it to consoles. It's a no-brainer.
Oh, I mean, we said from early on that, that we would definitely try to bring it to console. We've no confirmed dates or anything for that yet. Our focus at the moment is getting the PC version finished and polished off before, consoles are looked at. But, it's, you have to go to console. It's one of those things that, there's no battle royale game on console at the moment. We think it's a good idea, and I have a cousin that plays on Xbox. I want him to be able to play battle royale eventually.
All the players in the world don't mean anything. You got to get that one cousin, the good tangible result there.
Oh, well, I have a daughter as well, and they both have Xboxes, so I'd like them to play my game. She has a MacBook at home, so she can't play at the moment, and I'm not buying her PC just to play my game.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I haven't said it yet. I'm in love with your game. I think I've had so much fun just in the last couple weeks getting a group together. It's bizarre how it's kind of rekindled this old paintball group from high school. And it's like, oh yeah, this is the game we want. These are the exact emotions we had playing paintball. But as great as the game is, as much fun as people are having with it now, what are the big beats that you see as issues with the game? What are problems you're hoping to fix? Outside of small bugs, where it's like, okay, don't die from something quirky happening here. But what are the larger themes that you'd like to work on with the game?
Oh, server performance.
Yeah.
So client and server performance are two all through early access, and we get this a lot, we announce we're adding a new weapon or a new vehicle, and people are like, oh, why don't you fix the servers, or why don't you fix the client? And it's like, because they're different teams. And no matter how many times I say that, people will still, every post I make on Twitter, there's one guy that just constantly, the same reply every time is like, fix servers, please, or fix client. And we've said this many times, this client patch or this update, this monthly update is focused on client performance, and internally we've seen some great results.
Oh, great.
I gained about 15 to 20 FPS on the update internally. I'm only running at 1060 with an i7, and I saw some great gains. I was running at a solid 60. So, I'm looking forward to seeing how this patch is, welcomed by the community, because I think it will boost a lot of people's performance. But that's what our core focus is during EA, is fixing client performance and also fixing server performance. Server performance is going to take us a little bit longer, and it's it's not something we're not going to do. People, as I said, I addressed this yesterday in the dev blog, that, people are saying, oh, with all the money you're making, you could at least afford to get better servers. And it's nothing to do with the servers we have. We're running on AWS's best possible spec machines. And, I've seen the cost of that, and it's a lot of money. But, really, it's a problem with the networking code, and we're doing a lot of profiling internally. And these things just take a long time to fix sometimes. It's not you just can't throw money at a problem sometimes. And that's what a lot of people think we should be doing. It's like, oh, you've made, X million dollars, just fix the game. And unfortunately, if it was that easy, it'd be great. But, for us, that's what our, core focus is just improving the server performance and improving the overall performance for everyone. And yeah.
Has that been the biggest surprise for you about the development of this game, is just how tricky it is to get that network side right?
Yes. Luckily, we've got some very smart people working on that. We now have our engineering department is divided into kind of the engineers that work on the game proper and the service, but then we have this SWAT team of about 4 or 5 people internally that kind of, they just focus on certain problems like this server issue. It's just going to take us some time, because there's a lot of profiling to be done, and trying to find the root cause of the problem will take us time. But again, Unreal is a great engine to work with because it's open source, so we can just run into the code and try to figure it out ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, I have some dumb questions for you if you care to answer them. Something that after a lot of playing the game, I've always wondered. Is there any logic to the white circle? Is it just completely random within the larger circle, or what is the actual logic underpinning where that thing's going?
No, it's mostly random.
Okay.
I mean, there's no real logic. It's not based on player count or anything like that. It's pretty much, random within the previous circle.
Have you seen a lot of conspiracy theories out there?
Yeah, I mean, even today I got a tweet this morning going, "What did you do to the loot? Loot balance is broken again." We haven't touched the loot, that, and that's it's the beauty of the loot system we designed is, and it's the same with the Armored 3 loot system. That Lyric would be playing it, and I'd hear from him on a weekly basis that, oh, they've changed the loot again. We've never touched it. The loot system has kind of stayed the same in the last 2 years in Arma 3, and it's the same in Battlegrounds, that the loot system, while there was an issue with the balance a few months ago, or a month ago, that's been resolved now, and the loot's back to relative normal again. But it's just the way the loot system works that it sometimes you'll run into a house and find 2 or 3 AORs just because of the way it works, and that's generated a lot of conspiracy theories.
I'd imagine. Are there other big misconceptions out there that you see the fan base constantly talking about and you just want to clear up?
The servers, that's the main thing. I mean, it's funny, the EU servers perform, from what I'm seeing, like, people saying, oh, the EU servers are performing worse than the NA servers. But then I see people in NA saying, oh, well, the EU servers perform better than the NA servers. And, we run the servers on exactly the same hardware. So, I'm not sure what's happening. But again, this is something we're like kind of looking into seriously and trying to figure out why this is actually happening. Yeah,
for sure. All right. Back to other questions. Have you ever thought about color coding the ammo? I understand if you've played a lot, it's maybe not that confusing, but it's something for new players. It's a little bit confusing. It's like, okay, I constantly have to see what type of ammo this thing's going for. Do you see that as an issue in the game?
No, I mean, we have a learning curve, and it's something that I've always wanted from any game I make, is that it should be not hard to learn. It should be relatively easy to learn, but there should be some kind of entry barrier that, like, you have to learn the game, because I really believe that hard games are fun. It's half the reason I started Battle Royale in the first place was that a lot of the AAA titles I were playing, they weren't hard, that I kind of, the whole respawn mechanic, you kind of knew where enemies were coming from. There was no final bosses in a lot of the shooter games I was playing, and I found them relatively easy. And I wanted to make a game that you could never really learn. Like, you can learn the basic mechanics of the game and learn, the boost system and the attachment system, but, you could never really plan how your round is going to go. That you have to be always thinking on your feet.
Yeah, definitely. So what about just the basic environment of this game? How did you decide to go with kind of an Eastern European vibe? What is it about that scenery and that, just culture and atmosphere that you feel like works so well for this type of game?
I just love the architecture, that brutalist architecture. I've been a fan of it for many years. And when I was initially coming up with the design doc for the game mode, I just wrote, like, kind of on a forgotten island in the Black Sea, this is where it takes place. And I like that sort of feel to a world. I like that kind of Russian-y, kind of ruined island kind of feel. It was, and as I said, I come from Arma 2. That's where, like, it all started, and that was based in Chernarus and that whole world, and it's just a feel I really like.
Do you want that feel to be conveyed with the other maps as well, or do you want to vary up even that core feel?
Oh no, we're varying it up. Like we've said already, the two maps. One is a deserty kind of map based in, I think, Peru, that general direction.
Wow.
And the other one is another island, but based in sort of Yugoslavia, the Adriatic Sea. So it'll be more sort of Northern European feeling with a lot more different architectural feels.
Gotcha. Do you have a timeline in mind for those maps?
No.
Okay.
We've started about 2-3 weeks ago on development of these new maps. No timeline yet, but we're hoping within about 6 months or so to have at least something that will be testable.
Yeah, right on. So I mean, since you're planning maps around the world, do you have just some Google Doc somewhere with the hypothetical lore of the Battlegrounds world? Do you give a shit at all about lore?
So when I was first making setting up the design doc for the game, I did create a little lore behind the island because I just felt it would give the art team a much easier have a much easier job creating it. And you know, I think lore is important for creating it, but you know, we don't have a serious lore there. There is a bit of lore behind the island that we have already, but you know, it's not really that important to the game. I don't think.
So it's not
You know, if
something.
we were going to do a single player campaign, then maybe the history of the island would come into it. But in general, it's, you know, abandoned island or abandoned world used for battle royale. You know, when we first started it, the team were like, "Oh, it's an apocalypse," and I was like, "Nope, no, it's not.
Everything's
the
fine.
world is fine." You know, just having these abandoned islands that this battle royale game mode takes place on.
So
That's kind of the lore.
you never want to show like a control room of the masterminds conniving over this whole situation on the future release. It's just it is what it is. Stick with it.
Yeah, exactly. It is what it is at the moment. You know, maybe if someday I'll get to do a single player campaign, but you know, I'm not holding my breath for that. I want to get the game finished first.
Yeah. Are you into the idea of a single player campaign? Is it something you spend a lot of time thinking about?
Well, I did, like originally I thought, you know, because we have this Russian island and there's like, you know, evidence of a military kind of occupation there and this kind of stuff. I thought it'd be fun to have a kind of Watch Dogs kind of game based on the island where, you know, it was a bustling island with the military occupation and you and 5 friends or 4 friends, you know, can play like single kind of multiplayer campaign, but set in the kind of 70s. So, you know, I thought that would be kind of a cool era to set something like a Watch Dogs-y kind of, well, not Watch Dogs, but I mean where, you know, you set out to capture each town on the island and kind of take over the island from the military occupation. That was kind of my concept for it.
Right on. Are you ruling that out for even after release content? You think you're saving that for later down the road?
No plans for it yet. That's kind of a big dream. That's kind of like I just had the idea for it, but really, you know, it's not anywhere on a roadmap or anything. It's just, you know, an idea I had for it.
I'd have to imagine with the success of this thing that someone from Hollywood's come calling. Do you have anybody interested in adapting this thing in any way?
Not yet.
Okay.
We've had some, you know, offers, or I've had some, again, LinkedIn from some people there, but, you know, nothing kind of adaptations or anything like that yet. No.
Okay, right on. And then shifting back to gameplay, what's the plan for, you know, just the overall loot box experience? How do you want to expand that experience? Are you just confident that you only want it to be cosmetic?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
100% cosmetic.
Great.
Yeah. I mean, really, what I want to do is, you know, I love the CS:GO skin system. You know, I love that. Yes, while it is gambling to a certain extent, you know, I just like the fact that a player can be rewarded for playing the game. You know, and I think that having a skin economy is great for the game in the long run. You know, rewarding players with skins that are worth, you know, $200-300 from buying a key for whatever $2. You know, I think it's just good for, you know, CS:GO has proven that it's a great, you know, thing to have in the game, and it's something we're trying to follow up on.
Yeah. Do you worry about some of those skins and some of those, you know, pieces of clothing getting too wacky? Do you want to keep it somewhat restrained? Because I could imagine 5 years from now, just Adidas thrown in there and wacky froze and all sorts of nonsense.
No. I mean, we want to keep our skins as realistic and sort of as fitting to the feel of the game as we can.
Great. I love that strategy. Go for it. Hey, just to zoom in a little bit on one detail in the game, the vehicles, and specifically, tell me if I'm pronouncing this right, the Dacia.
Dacia. I've heard a few different things. I call it the Dacia because that's what they called it on Top Gear, and it's the main reason I put it in, because they always mentioned about the Dacia on pretty much everything, and I saw that there was a nice Dacia 1300, so that's why you put it in.
So it's a nice, loving Top Gear reference, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, never expected that. What about just the idea of putting so many rusted cars on the island? Is that a core part of the Battlegrounds experience? Is you want players to, from a distance, be like, is that usable?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to keep sort of players guessing, but really it's, again, to add more atmosphere to the island. There wasn't kind of a deliberate plan to confuse players. It was just to add a bit of atmosphere to the island, really, rather than kind of make them second guess if that's a vehicle or not.
But do you think they're going to be a staple for the other maps as well then?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Okay, you need the rusted cars. Not a post-apocalyptic, but everything's rusted for sure, everywhere.
Yeah, it's an abandoned island.
Okay, all right, love it.
Again, that sort of feeds into the lore that there was there were kind of military. It was a military occupation with like chemical and biological experiments on the island's population, and after a resistance attack on a biological facility, the island had to be abandoned, and that's why it's like the way it is at the moment.
Love it. That's perfect. So again, it just feels like it's such a satisfying primal experience to play this game. It's like, this is the core of everything that I want. Where else can you go with it? Like, how do you keep players around? How are you planning on building this out? Are you worried about it just being an annual, obviously, phenomenon, but how do you keep players beyond the phenomenon range?
Well, we have 2D and 3D replays planned for the game. So you'll be able to, we have a team that just joined that are, working on our 3D replay system at the moment, which is great because while they're doing that, we don't have to spend resources on it. And it's something that I really feel is essential to the game, is having this ability to watch your own round back in the game and have a spectator camera that you can just watch yourself and see and watch any round basically back and create content from. And I think this will help, the game in the long term where, it'll provide content creators and players with ways to create interesting videos and interesting, almost machinimas from our game.
Yeah.
But also going forward, we have a plan to add modding in. And I think that's what can help our game, survive that sort of 1 year flash in the pan, so to speak, that it's, we want to provide a platform for game modes. You already see it with our custom games where you've got like zombie modes and Sacriel did Sackhawk Down, and that this idea that we don't want to restrict people to just the Battle Royale game mode or just the game modes we make. We want to see what everyone can create, and eventually we want to allow these players to share those custom game modes on the workshop as game modes for other people to download and try. And it's my alarm.
Oh, good morning, by the way.
Yeah, if I could find it, it'd be great. What the hell? Oh, there it is. Sorry.
That's fine.
Oh.
No, absolutely. I'm focused. I'm really interested in that replay feature. So that would record the entire match and let you scrub through, or just like the last 5 minutes, or
no, the whole match.
And you say the 2D, so would that be like an overhead map and you could see where everybody is then?
Oh yeah, so we have if you look at a great way to look at it is we had it in our alpha and beta builds, but we've kind of not put it in because it's not finished yet. But if you look at like the Arma 3 leaderboards, we have a 2D replay system, and that's why that was what our inspiration for this was. That that you'll have a way to look at the match you played. It'll also help you figure out where you were killed from, and if someone, it's also really handy for catching cheaters and stuff, because you can see people teleporting across the map so easily, because every movement is tracked. But yeah, so like our 2D system is just for watching the match back, like a history of the match, but then the 3D replay will be a full in-game replay of all your rounds, so you can create new content from this from a different perspective, slow motion, bit of a cinematic camera, these kind of things.
That's going to be amazing. This is going to create this social media firestorm that'll never go away. Do you have an ETA and when that's actually going to be in the game then?
No ETA, but we're hoping within maybe a few months.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got a pretty definite plan for the next 4 or 5 months, and that's why, like, a lot of people said when we went into early access, they were like, "Oh yeah, another early access game. It'll never be finished." And I took that as a serious challenge. Or serious challenge, and I knew, but like the team we have here, I knew that we'll be out of early access in about 6 months. Might take us a little longer, but we're not going to be in early access for years. It's we have a pretty firm plan on when we get out of early access.
Yeah, that's fantastic to hear. So after spending so much time with the game, how do you like to play? Is there any play style you'd recommend to players out there to check out?
Sorry, say that again.
How do you like to play the game these days? How's your strategy
I
evolved?
don't get a chance to play it all that often.
Really?
I don't get a chance to play any games all that often anymore. Most of my days are spent writing design docs or reviewing stuff or doing interviews and this kind of stuff. But for me, I'm a loot goblin and I like to camp. Like to let other people fight before I take them on. For me, I've always been a sniper. My multiplayer gaming experience started off in Delta Force Black Hawk Down, and playing on those multiplayer maps and just getting a sniper rifle and like running for 5 to 10 minutes to get as far away as I could, and take kilometer shots. Same, I play a bit of Battlefield 1, and I'm that guy that spawns at the back spawn point and tries to hit people 700, 800 meters away. That's what I enjoy doing. It's relaxing for me. And I, when I play Battlegrounds, I try to kind of do the same. I don't like close quarter engagements. I prefer to be sitting behind a rock or in a bush with a rifle and taking out people at distance.
I love that, you prefer that style, but still, it seems like scopes and snipers are so well balanced where it's still a relatively rare treat where you can really capitalize on that effectively. Was it tough to get that ratio just right of how many scopes to populate the world with?
Yeah, I mean, we have a massive spreadsheet that kind of gives us our probabilities for each weapon, and we're quite happy with the loot balance at the moment. I think it's a good feeling. But now we have a data science team, and we're really going to be looking into exactly how people are playing the game from a data point of view, and really start to tweak the game from that way rather than just from feedback from players. We want to kind of get an overall sense of how people are playing the game, and then really start tweaking and balancing it from the data we're seeing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, hey, anything else you want to talk about? Anything else you want to get off your chest?
No.
Is it interesting to be at the center of this whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, I was a DJ for a long time, and I never sought fame. I was that DJ that was kind of quiet and just mixed my tunes and enjoyed mixing the music rather than, being a party monster. And I had a good friend who was like my DJ partner. The two of us DJed together, and he was he's a lead, or was a lead guitarist in a semi-famous rock band in Europe, and he loved that. So I left him do the attention-seeking thing, and I just did my music. And it's the same with gaming. It's half the reason I'm called PlayerUnknown. It's as much as I'm getting to be more known now, fame is not something I really seek. It's I'd rather just make my games and make good games. Sure, the fame is nice, but I still like being able to go to conventions and no one knowing who I am. It's one of those little things I hold on to. Like even at our own booth at some of the conventions, I've heard people talk about me. I'm standing beside them, and they're like, "Oh yeah, PlayerUnknown this and PlayerUnknown that." And I'm sort of sitting beside them, kind of listening, going, "Yeah, that's great," and having no clue who I am. And I like that, And even my headshot nowadays is, half my face is covered, and I want to kind of. I know it's not possible for me to remain completely unknown, but the less people see of me, I think the better for me.
You look at examples like Notch, and it's like, maybe that wasn't the healthiest for that person to go through emotionally.
Yeah, I mean, although Notch these days, master level troll, he's.
Well, that's what you can aspire to, Brendan. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
What's been the biggest perk so far? You say fame, is great. You don't want too much of it, but has there been one thing that's really satisfying about this overall experience for you?
I'm just happy that, people enjoy the game now. Look, traveling, getting to go to these conventions is fantastic, and it's great for my daughter as well, because I get to bring her back really cool swag and stuff. And she ends up being one of the cooler kids in school just because she has so much stuff that, no one else in the school can get. But for me, it's like, I'm just really happy that people are enjoying the game. When we first had our closed beta tests, I was just worried that, people wouldn't get it, or the performance would be bad, and then seeing people stream and play and generally enjoy the game and not have too many performance issues. There are people out there with issues still. I would say like 90% of people are having a great time playing the game, and there still is 10%, but we're not going to abandon those people. We're going to get everyone having a great experience. But for me, it's that just people are enjoying the game. That's what I'm really happy about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, Brendan, congratulations on making one of the greats, man.
Thank you so much, and thanks for the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of the Game Informer Show. Be sure to tune in next week, and we'll have a new episode waiting for you. Bye, everybody.